Yeah, okay. Okay, so what was the end result?
We're live. Hi. All right. I know everybody's excited. It's that fall weather. It just gets so crisp. It makes you want to go out and save the world. All right. Well, that's what we're doing today, saving the world, one lagoon at a time. All right. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so the next thing will be the roll call. Jackie?
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Lorraine Koss. Here. Charles Venuto.
Here.
Vinnie Taranto.
Here.
Don Dice.
Here.
John Windsor.
Here.
Terry Casto.
Here.
Bobby Putnam is not here yet. Laura Lee Thompson. Here. Stephanie Ely is not here yet. Kimberly Newton is not here yet. Todd Swangle is not here yet. Kurt Smith.
Here.
Barbara Wall Scanlon. Here. Eric Manis.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next thing will be, we'll do the approval of the agenda, but the auditor, RSM, has requested that they move in front of the monthly progress report. So that would be item 6A. And so I'd like to see if we can get a motion to move that up after we approve the minutes. So moved. Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? Any public comment? I know the public came just for that. So you guys will be able to hear it and then go. All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. The next thing will be the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Any public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. And so now we will go into the half-cent sales surtax audit report. Michelle? Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Michelle Coppola. I'm a manager with RSM, and I'm happy to be here today to present our next round of the half-cent sales tax for Sorrel. I'm going to go to our executive summary. And on here, you're going to see that we have no exceptions from our testing, which is great. On our overview page here, we did something a little bit different this time around, and we went ahead and showed the projections and the actuals all the way through till August, even though our testing concluded in May. This is showing all the way through August. In addition, we added this table, which basically drives that graph. It's also going all the way through August. For the results on our collections testing, as we mentioned earlier, there was no exceptions here, but we do independently confirm all the revenues that are reported through the Sorrel surtax from the Department of Revenue site. And then on our expenditure testing, we had a total of about over $6 million in which was expended from Sorrel for the period of our audit, which was from June 1st, 2023 through May 31st, 2024. We tested a little over $3 million of expenditures, so a little over half of the expenditures that incurred during that window. Within that, we looked at 59 active projects. And, within that window, there was 59 active projects. We looked at 19 of those projects, and that included about 168 invoices. Again, no exceptions in there. And then down here on the procurement page, there were no competitive solicitations that were approved during our window. There was one ITB that was presented to the board, however, it was rejected. So our testing for procurement was around the new task orders and the subsequent purchase orders that were around the existing competitive solicitations that were already intact for this project. Again, no exceptions to report within the procurement window. So that concludes our report. Are there any questions?
Okay, any questions from the committee? What is ITB?
It's intent to bid.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay,
All right, with no other questions, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, we will move on now to the next item, which is our monthly progress report.
Good morning. We have our quarterly reports today, so I'm just going to kind of highlight the extras on here, all right?
Great.
So the work completed this month, the Citizen Oversight Committee Structural Change Ordinance was approved by the County Commission on October 22nd. All eligible reappointments and both emeritus members were approved by the County Commission on that same day. And just as a update on the applications for new members, that link should be going live next week, hopefully. So share the news.
And that, we'll get an email, Terry?
Yeah,
that
we'll
goes
send out emails. We're going to be posting on social media. There'll be notices for it.
Okay, if you could make that email as easily forwardable, if that's a word, as possible, because I would highly recommend everybody shoot that out to as many qualified people and pockets as we know. Thank you.
All right. Scooting on down to the University of Central Florida, they completed their one-year monitoring at rainwater. They counted over 13,000 oysters at a density of 1,166 to 4,117 oysters per square meter. That had a recruitment of 14% of those oysters being adult-sized. We executed 2 other Brevard Zoo oyster contracts, Central IRL Oyster 3 and Central IRL Oyster 4. 2 more derelict vessels were removed. The Spark Tide Lagoon Loyal Task Order was complete for the education and outreach. We're going to show you the Rockledge Flow equalization video today. We are currently working on the 2025 plan update. So you'll be getting that draft in December. Hopefully, I think the 15th, we're aiming to get that to the COC. The South Beaches A septic to sewer, we have 21 of 37 connection agreements executed. Moving on down to Grand Canal, we have removed approximately 416,000 cubic yards of dredged material, and that project will be closing down for manatee season at the end of the month. And then lastly, we have our seagrass and oyster restoration projects at Manzo and Hog Point. Those exclusion devices were affected by Hurricanes Milton and Helene, so we're still working on getting those set back up, and the monitoring is still being conducted on those projects. For presentations, we had quite a few. We were double booked on a few days this past month, too. Abby did the oyster gardening training. Virginia was at the Little Growers Make a Green Noise event. Brandon did the second oyster gardening training. Virginia presented at the American Society for Civil Engineers at the Space Coast. That was up in Titusville. And then Aaliyah and myself were at the Day in the Life of the Indian River Lagoon up at Kiwanis Park. Quite a few staff were involved in the Native Rhythms Festival that was held at Wickham Park. That was a 3-day event. And then Abby and Cole participated in the Indian River Lagoon Day at Front Street Park. There's a few science forums coming up. The coalition has their Straight Talk on December 10th. And then that is about it for that.
Okay.
I'll save the rest for Aaliyah.
All right. Any questions from the committee on the progress report? Yes, Laura Lee.
I get asked by people all the time, what kind of volunteer things can I participate in? And there's really no easy place to send them to that has such a compilation as what we have. Is there a way to make the upcoming volunteer participation opportunities easy for people to get to on our website? I don't even know if it, I don't know if it even exists on our website in this format.
we don't
other than
have that.
Other than trying to send somebody to an agenda, which is really hard to do. But if this information was made easy for people to get to, it would be really helpful.
Agreed. Brandon?
So there's not a spot on it right now. Do have a little news section. We could potentially pop those into news items. Would probably be the easiest way to accomplish that.
Okay. So I think we can take a look and see how to incorporate
Yeah,
that.
Talk with IT and see how we can get it on the website.
Okay, great. Great idea, Laura Lee.
It would really be helpful, because like now you go, oh, go to the MRC website, go to the zoo website.
Well, I love the fact people are asking you, because
They
they're
are.
asking the right person.
Oh, yeah, they
Well,
ask me all the time, everywhere I go. They're like, where can I, how can I volunteer?
That's a good thing.
Thank
That's a good-
you.
that's a
Yeah, and
good
the other thing
Thank you.
is we post those all in our newsletter too, so they can sign up for our newsletter and it gets delivered right to their email inbox.
Yeah, I think the newsletter is good, and then the website, if we can find a place for them, would be great as well. On-demand volunteer opportunities, love it. All right. Any other, Dr. Windsor?
Yeah, if I could, the volunteer opportunities are frequently the same organizations. And so keeping up to date on what's happening on a day-by-day basis, I think is a little bit time-consuming. But those organizations like MRC, why not just have a simple link or a simple statement someplace? These are the organizations you can commonly go to, and they've been on these monthly reports for months and months and months and months. The same organizations, it's just the dates change.
Yeah.
So why not just make that short list
Yeah.
and put that up someplace, and that could be handed out more easily.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be great. Then you can say, just go to brevardfl.gov and click on the link underneath the manatee, and then if it could be like right on the front page, as soon as they click on the link under the manatee, and just here are the organizations you can check out, to look for volunteer opportunities. And that way you wouldn't be trying to change the date every month. But there's got to be a easy way to send people, an effective way to get them where they can find information.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not so easy on the volunteer organizations' sites, because some of them will post some opportunities on their social media, but then they put others on their main website, and they might not be on the same thing, so we usually have to, when we're looking for these, have to hunt several different places to find them. So there's not always just a simple one place to send them to on the organization's website.
Right, but maybe you just send them to their homepage, and then each organization, they should be trying to make it easy for people to find their volunteer opportunities. That's not your problem, but just a list of websites that people can go look at.
So let's, Laura Lee, being in the nonprofit industry, you're 100%, people ask me all the time how to get involved, and there is just no one source. I think Todd has something, and then Terry, but go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't agree with that approach, because every extra step somebody's got to go through makes it that much more likely they're just not going to bother. And so while I understand that it's the nonprofit's obligations to create that expectation, if we want to see greater levels of success, making it as easy as possible, and we've got as much visibility as anyone else, I think. So the more steps you can remove, the more likely you're going to get that extra person or two. And now, if I agree that if it's a lot of work, if there's ways to make the actual data management easier, that there's solutions for doing that, for having live links to be able to pull that data in. But from my perspective, I think having the things that we care about and we think are important, the more that we can get that centralized and focus on getting Swirl's name out there and have that connection and make it as easy as possible on people, because every extra step's going to be somebody you're going to lose.
And I think and then Terry, I'll go to you. I was thinking that if we're typing it up to put it in our agenda, copying and pasting that exact same list and sending it to IT and having them do their magic might be the easiest step. And then there's no additional work, because I do think process is important. Terry, did you have something?
I was listening to the comments and I'm thinking, we can't get people to come look at our site to figure out what we're doing with Sorrel money. But before I came to that thought, I was thinking we could reach out to the nonprofits to encourage them to put the active, current opportunities, keep that updated, and then just have us, as John said, just have the organization links.
Okay.
Kind of balance it out so we don't put a bunch of work on on this staff.
Yeah. We have reached out before and asked them to send us things. It just doesn't always happen. Some do, some don't, But we've been in contact with all the groups and tell them to let us know whenever they have volunteer opportunities. I still have to look and make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Are they posting it? I know MRC posts their volunteer opportunities. Are the other groups, Orca and so on, are they posting theirs?
Some of them post on a calendar, some send them out in emails, some have them on their website. There's, like I said, some are on their social media. Everyone has a little bit different style that they do that we pull from.
So let's, I would recommend, if it's okay with everybody, to have Brandon work with IT and find a labor, non-intensive way to take the data we're already publishing. and
Yeah, like I
have
said,
it-
the news story would be the easiest.
Have it
Just
on
copy and paste
demand
in the
on the
news stories
website.
and create several ones of those.
Great.
Probably be the easiest if we're going to do individual dates. If we're just doing links to the main organizations, then that's a static thing that I could do.
Well, yeah, why don't we take a look at doing one, whichever
Yeah.
one you want to do, and then if you could, I know we've talked about keeping track of some of the data. So let's see how often those are getting used and how often they're getting clicked. And Laura Lee, if you would use the scientific method of seeing if the people that ask you are lessened or more, just so we can get a feel. So this will be a process we can work on. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good discussion. All right. Terry, I think that was it for the monthly progress, right? Okay, I see Anthony standing there. Monthly revenue graph and financial statements?
He'll do it for me.
That's what I was wondering.
Right, good morning.
Good morning, Molly.
So we received 4.2 million again for August collections, and we're at 418 million so far in the program. And for the monthly financial statement, for the budget, we're at 418 million. And total assigned, 384 million for the revenue. And for expenditures, for total assigned, we're at 69 million, and actuals 21.8 million. And now we have the quarterly financial table. And the grant financial table for quarter four. And I just wanted to point out that we completed a TDC grant for restoring seagrass for improved natural resilience. It's at the very bottom there. And we're at 106 million for grants that we've received.
Awesome.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Molly?
Yeah, it
Terry,
just,
please.
I was looking for it. So somewhere it looked like looked like significantly short on grant planning. We had a budget for grants, and what we actually collected looked like it was significantly less than that. Are we just grants lagging, or are we not being as successful with grants, or? And this was just the quarterly report, right? So where are we overall with grants?
We have received a lot of amendments in the past few months, especially for the septic to sewer projects. We have a few more muck grants coming in. We had an amendment for 4 million, and we applied for more grants. So there's more coming in the next few months.
Is there a particular form, Terry, that you see that in?
I think it was on the summary page where grants. Yeah, I don't even know if I'm reading the thing right. Well, we had it, budget, federal grants, 8 million, we collected 3. State grants at 37, in the budget, we collected 2.
Oh.
That seems like we're off plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, right now we're working on getting the reimbursements done for the grants. We're working more for the septic to sewer, the quick connects and the septic upgrade grants. It's just there hasn't been a lot of movement with the septic to sewer conversion program and Sykes TEM, and then there are a lot of big grants that still need to be spent, and those projects are going into construction.
So I think,
So-
Terry, the way that is the total assigned is those funds that we have actually applied to a project. We've still collected what's in the budget, is that correct, Molly?
Yeah, the total assigned is reimbursed, so we've received that money.
That's just the amount that we've reimbursed. The total, the budget is the amount that we have. So work has been a little slow, but we still have those funds.
The budget is the actuals?
That's collected from the state or
Yeah, not all
federal.
the grants are in the budget.
Okay.
So maybe would a different term? Is that kind of what? Okay. All right. Okay, Molly, thank you.
Thank you.
And on that, Terry, I know last month we talked about one of those projects and we had a choice to make. Did we hear from FDEP? Have they decided on any of the 100 million from the Lagoon grants yet?
So we know that we will hear back in the spring, but we haven't been given an exact date of when they will show whether we've been awarded the funds or not.
Okay,
Yep. But they confirmed that they're still,
they're still going through
yes.
and bean counting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Laura Lee?
I have a question since Anthony's sitting there. Last night, I was having dinner with some tourism people, and one of the people there was talking about how she has a house it's on a canal that connects to the Banana River just south of Kelly Park, and it's an older home, and she has cast iron pipes, and she's having the lining put into the cast iron pipes. A homeowner that does that, are they eligible for any kind of reimbursement for their money that they're spending to fix their pipes?
Yes, so if there's evidence that the pipes had holes in them, then it would qualify for our leaky laterals grant. The idea being if there's holes, waste could be exiting or rainwater entering and overwhelming the system.
Right.
So we have the leaky laterals budget to provide financial assistance for those homeowners.
So she should get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if she wants to email irlproject@brevardfl.gov, she can include her address, contact information, and that she's working on her laterals, her sewer laterals.
Thank you.
All right. Brandon, we have the leaky laterals on the website too, right?
Yeah,
Under
there is.
project type?
There is information on the website as well under the homeowner grants tab.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, great. All right, thank you. Laura Lee, 2 for 2 on good questions today, I tell you. Yes, Lorraine?
Well, can I ask, so there would be a similar mechanism for determining the amount available based on how close they are to the lagoon, or how does that work?
Actually, no, because it's, because the impact could be either waste leakage or inflow of water into the system, the math doesn't correlate with these septic systems, which are always leaking, and so it's clear. Whereas leaky laterals could their potential impact could be letting rainwater in and overwhelming the system and potentially causing overflows.
So are they flat amounts, or what?
Yes, they are flat amounts.
What is the amount?
Up to 2,000 or up to 10,000, depending on the type of damage. And so we need evidence for that to be able to provide the grant.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. And if I do recall correctly, this is a lump sum amount that we've approved to go towards this. So once it's gone, then it's gone.
Yes, it is lump sum. We had some grant funds we were able to match to make those funds last a bit longer,
Great,
but yeah, it is lump sum.
okay. All right. No other questions? We will move forward. All right, the quarterly project update. Aaliyah, good morning.
Okay, good morning. So this is the Q4 reporting period from July 1st to September 30th. And in your performance table, any of the cells highlighted in yellow are ones that have made progress since the last quarter. So first up, we have the public education projects. There are 7 projects in the plan. 1 of them is completed and 6 are underway. The fertilizer and septic maintenance campaigns are at 89% and 86% complete. The Restore Our Shores project is at 55% complete, and this quarter, that team collected 275 habitats at their oyster homecoming event, which included 7,000 pounds of live oysters to be used as seed for reefs. And that's a photo from that event. They have also completed their oyster gardening trainings, which have recruited 90 new households for this season. Oops. The Lagoon Loyal Neighborhood Competition awarded their 3 winners. Country Walk in Melbourne will be installing a pond garden. Indian River City and Titusville selected a butterfly garden for their project, and River Groves in Rockledge is working on finding a location for their shoreline buffer garden. For the wastewater treatment facility projects, we have 7 projects in the plan. 3, the Cocoa Beach, Palm Bay, and Titusville plants have been completed. 1 is in construction, and 3 are in design. The Rockledge facility is currently at 95% complete. This quarter, they completed the startup of the transfer pump, installed digester equipment, and got electricity installed and connected. The photos here show the new pipe that transfers the pre-treated water, wastewater to the new equalization basin, and the crane that's used to lift the pump for routine maintenance. 3 projects are in the design phase. Melbourne Grants Wharf has design complete and is undergoing value engineering with plans to rebid in this next quarter. The West Melbourne Ray Bullard facility has 100% design complete. All of their bids were rejected, and they're working with the engineer to adjust construction costs. And the South Brevard Wharf is in bid preparation for design. The Rapid Infiltration Basin and spray field upgrades, we have 2 projects in the plan. The Long Point Park upgrade was one of our first projects completed, and the Sterling House condo project is not yet contracted. For package plant connections, there are 4 in the plan. 1 is completed. The Willow Lakes RV Park has 100% design complete, and they are inspecting existing sewers to repair deficiencies prior to connecting to the county sewer system. The Cove is still pending additional funding before moving forward. There are 6 sewer lateral projects in the plan. 4 smoke testing projects are complete. The county-wide repairs are underway with 692 of 416 code enforcement cases resolved. The Titusville Osprey Sewer Lateral Project is at 90% complete. They've actually completed smoke testing, and they're just working on their final report now, which will include a list of houses with deficiencies that we can then add to our repairs and will be eligible for SORL funding. For septic removal, we have 45 projects in the plan with 4 completed, which include 278 connections in those completed projects. 10 are in construction. The City of West Melbourne has started construction on Lake Ashley and Dundee Circle, and the City of Melbourne has 6 projects underway. The Miko project is at 63% complete, and 1 connection has been made on that. And South Central C is at approximately 88% complete, having 131 of the 150 connections completed. We have several septic removal projects in the bidding phase, including South Beach's Zone O and P and Sykes Creek's Zone M, N, and T. The remaining projects are in various stages of design, and there are 9 projects in the plan that are not contracted. And some of those projects, for example, the parks are are related to some of our projects that are already in design, and they're just waiting for those to move forward. And then Rockledge is waiting for their wastewater treatment upgrades before to be completed, and Titusville Zone H is being withdrawn. For septic upgrades, we have 1,625 septic upgrades in the plan. This quarter, we received 49 additional applications for upgrades and have completed 73, bringing our new total to 327 upgrades completed. We have 876 quick connects in the plan. This quarter, we received 83 additional applications, 19 of which were completed, bringing our new total to 360. We have 269 stormwater projects in the plan. 45 have been completed, and this quarter, the Titusville Riverfront nutrient removing filtration boxes were completed, and this is our 96th completed project, and this project is estimated to remove 679 pounds of nitrogen a year. Also making progress this quarter is the Cocoa Beach McNabb Outfall Bioretention Project, which is at 90% complete. Also in Cocoa Beach and also at 90% complete is the Woodland Business Center project. The M1 Canal project is at 65% complete, and you can see photos of that here. In the top photo is the outfall pipe to the stormwater treatment area, and the bottom photo shows the weir that's been built behind the Melbourne Square Mall. There are 4 stormwater projects in the bidding phase and 11 that are in design. And then we have 9 uncontracted stormwater projects, 2 of which, the Lionel Road and Hamilton Ave box projects, are being withdrawn. All other projects have plans to move forward. For vegetation harvesting, we have 10 projects in the plan, 8 are complete, and just a reminder, these are one-time removal projects. This quarter, the Cocoa Beach Golf Course Stormwater Pond Harvesting Project was completed, removing over 2 million pounds of vegetation and almost 2,000 pounds of nitrogen. This is our 97th completed project, and you can see before and after photos here on the slide. Basin 958 received 1 bid that came in higher than expected, and they are working on negotiations for that project. There are 21 muck removal projects and 16 interstitial water treatment projects. We have 3 muck projects that have been completed and 2 interstitial treatment projects completed. And we have 2 in the construction phase. So the Grand Canal project is at about 87% complete and has removed approximately 414,000 cubic yards of muck. This muck volume is being updated with gator dredging to be included in the change order based on the temporary use agreement extension that was approved. After this change order is executed, that percent complete is going to change. Dredging is also about to shut down for manatee season at the end of the month. And the Sykes Creek project has 76,000 cubic yards of muck that's been dredged, and they are waiting on bid specifications for phase 2. The rejected bid specifications for the Oak Alley Muck project are almost done being amended for rebid. We have 11 projects in the design phase. Titusville Railroad East and West and Canaveral South are completing an alternatives assessment, and there are 4 uncontracted muck and IT projects in the plan. For oyster bars, there are 25 projects in the plan. This quarter, the zoo installed 4,500 square feet at the Banana River pilot project under the Banana River contract, and they completed 12,000 square feet at the Turkey Creek Offshore project, which is under the Central Tributary contract. And the photo here is showing bags of oyster shell being loaded onto the barge. Of the 25 oyster projects in the plan, 11 have been completed. 5 listed on the previous slide are in construction. under construction. There are 4 that are in design and 5 that are uncontracted, with Riverview Park being withdrawn. For planted shorelines, there are 11 projects in the plan, 8 are complete. The Titusville Causeway project is underway, and Sorrel is funding the living shoreline portion of that project, and they are still constructing the WADs for that project. We have 2 uncontracted planted shoreline projects, and the Riverview project is being withdrawn. For clams, this plan has funding for 10 farmers, and we have 7 active farmers, and this is, again, a one-time nutrient removal project. So overall, we have 178,000 pounds of nitrogen being removed annually, plus an additional 81,000 that is a one-time removal. We've received 196 scopes of work. 188 projects are in or have completed design, and 127 are in or have completed construction, and we are now at 97 projects completed.
All right.
Here are the nitrogen and phosphorus numbers in a graph showing with the completed projects, projects in progress, the ones that are completed and in progress, and with the plant updates. And last time we were asked for a financial graph, so that here's a financial updates, again, with the completed projects, what's been spent, additional grant funds, what's in progress, and projected costs.
All right. Laura Lee.
Why was Lionel Road project removed?
That one was withdrawn. They did some initial water quality sampling, and it had low loading in it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Lorraine, please.
Yeah, no, can I get a copy, or is this going to be available? Do we put this PowerPoint on the website? And can I get a copy?
The video, we can send you a copy. The video is on our website. We don't update these presentations, we don't put the presentations on the website specifically.
I'd like a copy, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Eric, yes.
Just curious as to why the Riverview one was withdrawn. That's near me.
Yeah, the city of Melbourne decided to withdraw that to allow other potential projects to use that funding because they've had delays.
They've had what?
Delays.
Okay, Eric, yeah.
One more I should ask before. The Grand Canal project, do we have an estimate as to when that would be completed?
2027. Mid-year 2027.
Bless you. Yes, Laura Lee.
I guess it's a follow-up on the Lionel Road, because you guys have done just amazing work up in the north end of the lagoon. Will Lionel Road be tested again in the future to see if it would qualify?
Probably not.
Or is it out, it's just out, right?
Right now, it's out, and we're going to focus on more higher loading priority basins.
Okay, but as we keep developing up there, and so, and at some point in the future, the testing may end up showing it something different.
Possibly.
Thank you.
Barbara, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Regarding the Grand Canal project, does it include the southern extension, which kind of goes into the river and then extends? There's like a peninsula cutting it, and it's between the Pines and Marina Isles. Is that included?
No, that's part of the Indian Harbor Beach portion of their muck dredging project.
So we would have to go for a progress report to the city of Indian Harbor Beach?
Yes, so that project is using the Palm Bay DMMA. So O'Galley's in line to use it first, and then Satellite Beach and then Indian Harbor Beach are going to use it after the O'Galley project is complete.
So it is planned, but it's
Yes,
by a different
it's
entity?
planned, and it's currently under contract as well with us.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, great. Lorraine, did you have something else?
Well, I was just going to ask,
Please.
for the projects that are not contracted, is there some sort of deadline in place? Because, of course, the referendum was for 10 years.
Yes. So every year I reach out to the entities that have uncontracted projects to check the status. And so that's why this time with the quarterly reports, you're seeing a few more withdrawals because some of the entities have determined that those projects are not feasible to move forward in a timely manner and want to release those funds back to the COC to reallocate for projects that can be completed in a more timely manner.
And so uncontracted projects could theoretically not contract until the year 2026? Or what year?
Yeah, part of the role of the COC is to figure that out and determine, like, if that project's not moving forward, you can reallocate those funds towards another project.
And so I think, Lorraine, every year when we've talked about new projects and project substitutions, we've said, you know, we haven't spent any funds on this one, this project looks better, why don't we replace? So I don't think as a board, we've put a deadline on when you need to start construction. But I think as the, tax is nearing the sunset, there are lots of those questions that will be, that will come up, be more pertinent. Charles?
So on those funds or those projects that have been withdrawn, have those costs, I guess they were, I don't know, not maybe committed, but were they taken off the overall sheet or the bottom line?
No, they are allocated in
They're
the
still
plan. They're
allocated,
part of
yeah.
that $586 million in the plan.
All right. The one thing, Eric, to your point and Barbara's questions about the Grand Canal, as Aaliyah said, next month, or we're still waiting for Gator to give us an update on that new muck. So next month, as Aaliyah said, that completed percentage will probably go reverse because we're going to add all the new additional muck that we're going to get out of that project, which will take us to the 2027.
That amount that they're updating is for a year?
That's the new muck that they did the new survey. The original numbers were from 2014 or 2015. So then they did a new survey of how much muck they think is there. And that's what we talked about, I think, in May. And then the Board of County Commission approved extending that DMMA site to 2027. So that new tonnage of muck will be in the next quarterly. All right.
I did want to add one question. Right now, we have the quarterly financial table and the performance table. Next year, our financial table is going to be larger and not fit on the page. So I wanted to ask if we should combine like a total cumulative, or do you still want to keep the fiscal years on the financial table or add the cumulative totals to the performance table? Or I can remove the responsible entity column on the financial table. Just kind of wanted some direction on how to make this
Great
work.
question. Anybody have a feel?
Perhaps the first 5 years.
I was going to say some combination, I think would probably be best. Does that sound like a good recommendation, everybody?
I also.
Will you come up here?
Oh, Molly, we use a mic? Yeah.
I also suggested to Terry that we combine like fiscal year 2017 and 2020 into one column. Yeah, and then just the rest.
That sounds good.
Just 17 and 20, or the 17 through 20?
Through 20.
Through 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar like the grant financial table has it, so they can kind of match.
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I was such a young guy in 2017, so let's just combine it all together. All right. Thank you, Aaliyah, Molly, thank you. All right, so now we will go ahead and go into our video. Rockledge Flow Equalization Basin.
All right, so this one took us a little bit to film because we ended up being on a rainy day the first day when we were doing the interviews, and we weren't able to get the B-roll footage, so they had to go back for that, but finally got that completed and put together, so we'll We'll let them roll it.
This project in the City of Rockledge wastewater consists of a 1.4 million gallon equalization basin with associated pumping facility and electrical building with standby generator. The purpose of this project is to pretty much stabilize the fluctuating flows that we have to help make a more consistent treatment process for the plant operations. This new project will actually take care of the nitrogen portion of the nutrient uptake.
Basically, as the influent flow comes in, it's going to flow by gravity from the pretreatment structure to the equalization basins. When the flows are coming in, they're high, it's going to sit and just store the excess flow. When the flows are low, it's going to take the flows and pump it to the downstream processes to maintain a steady flow throughout the
Giving us the drama and suspense.
Are you guys not getting audio?
No audio.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Nice view of stairway.
And we'll take a break after this, guys, and gals, and then we'll dive into the meat and potatoes. Or the spinach and mushrooms for those vegetation. I don't know. What's the meat and potatoes alternative? Spinach and mushrooms, Terry? Okay.
Five-minute break, I'll bring it up to you.
Sounds great. All right, let's go ahead and actually, we'll take a 10-minute, real quick. 10-minute break, and then we'll be back. Thank you all.
This project in the City of Rockledge wastewater consists of a 1.4 million gallon equalization basin with associated pumping facility and electrical building with standby generator. The purpose of this project is to pretty much stabilize the fluctuating flows that we have to help make a more consistent treatment process for the plant operations. This new project will actually take care of the nitrogen portion of the nutrient uptake.
Basically, as the influent flow comes in, it's going to flow by gravity from the pretreatment structure to the equalization basins. When the flows are coming in, they're high, it's going to sit and just store the excess flow. When the flows are low, it's going to take the flows and pump it to the downstream processes to maintain a steady flow throughout the downstream treatment plant. It makes it easier for the operators to control as your influent flows and your nutrient loads come in. It changes the dynamics of the process. So by keeping it steady, you have less fluctuations and you can maintain more steady treatment.
This is phase one of reaching advanced waste treatment standards, and we are in the process of in research development of phase two, which will handle the phosphorus of the water standards.
The addition of this 1.4 million gallon equalization basin will allow the city to control flow rates through the different treatment processes in the plant, reducing ammonia nitrogen. levels in the reclaimed water by 50 to 85%. Treated effluent from the wastewater plant is used as reclaimed water for irrigation purposes throughout the city of Rockledge. Reclaimed water is a great way to conserve water. However, when the reclaimed water is high in nutrient concentrations, the nutrients leach into the groundwater, which ultimately leads to the lagoon. Those high nutrients result in harmful algal blooms, which then result in fish kills.
So this project reduces the amount of nitrogen in the reclaimed water, but it's still important to use that water responsibly. So homeowners can help out by making sure that they're not overwatering. Only watering once or twice a week with about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch each time that you water. You can test out how much you're watering by placing a small tin can, like a tuna can, in your yard and measuring the amount of water it collects in about 15 minutes. Visit lagoonloyal.com for more tips and tricks on how you can irrigate responsibly and other ways that you can help the Indian River Lagoon.
This project in the City of Rockledge wastewater consists of a 1.4 million gallon equalization basin with associated pumping facility and electrical building with standby generator. The purpose of this project is to pretty much stabilize the fluctuating flows that we have to help make a more consistent treatment process for the plant operations. This new project will actually take care of the nitrogen portion of the nutrient uptake.
Basically, as the influent flow comes in, it's going to flow by gravity from the pretreatment structure to the equalization basins. When the flows are coming in, they're high, it's going to sit and just store the excess flow. When the flows are low, it's going to take the flows and pump it to the downstream. operators to control.
All right. All right, all right. Let's go ahead and bring this meeting back to order. All right, Brandon.
All right. Logan's done what magic he can. It's going to be playing out of the owl instead of the speakers overhead, so hopefully everyone can hear it.
All right, let's go, Mr. Owl.
Oh, okay. We're playing on here.
This project in a 1.4 million gallon equalization basin with associated pumping facility and electrical building with standby generator. The purpose of this project is to pretty much stabilize the fluctuating flows that we have to help make a more consistent treatment process for the plant operations. This new project will actually take care of the nitrogen portion of the nutrient uptake.
Basically, as the influent flow comes in, it's going to flow by gravity from the pretreatment structure to the equalization basins. When the flows are coming in, they're high, it's going to sit and just store the excess flow. When the flows are low, it's going to take the flows and pump it to the downstream processes to maintain a steady flow throughout the downstream treatment plant. It makes it easier for the operators to control as your influent flows and your nutrient loads come in. It changes the dynamics of the process.
This is phase one of reaching advanced waste treatment standards, and we are in the process of the research development of phase two, which will handle the phosphorus of the water standards.
The addition of this 1.4 million gallon equalization basin will allow the city to control flow rates through the different treatment processes in the plant, reducing ammonia nitrogen levels in the reclaimed water by 50 to 85%. Treated effluent from the wastewater plant is used as reclaimed water for irrigation purposes throughout the city of Rockledge. Reclaimed water is a great way to conserve water. However, when the reclaimed water is high in nutrient concentration, the nutrients leach into the groundwater, which ultimately leads to the lagoon. Those high nutrients result in harmful algal blooms, which then result in fish kills.
So this project reduces the amount of nitrogen in the reclaimed water, but it's still important to use that water responsibly. So homeowners can help out by making sure that they're not overwatering. Only watering once or twice a week with about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch each time that you water. You can test out how much you're watering by placing a small tin can, like a tuna can, in your yard and measuring the amount of water it collects in about 15 minutes. Visit lagoonoil.com for more tips and tricks on how you can irrigate responsibly and other ways that you can help the Indian River Lagoon.
All right. Great job. Thank you. Any questions, comments from the committee? Laura Lee?
I don't know if you have my card today, but I just wanted to comment on the difference in the water clarity between this video, this recent video, versus the videos from 2 and 3 and 4 years ago, when we would have those drone shots of the lagoon and you couldn't see the bottom at all. It was just ugly brown water, versus what we just saw in this recent video. Is remarkable difference in the
Yeah.
clarity of the water.
Yeah. And we've had some rain and some wind, and all that kicks up that turbidity, but yeah, that water is clearing itself out quickly, like any good system would. Good lagoon, good lagoon. All right. Lorraine, please, yes.
Yeah, just a quick question, so without looking through here, so we're supporting Phase 2 as well on this project, or is it just Phase 1 that we supported?
No, their Phase 2 is focusing on phosphorus, so we're just doing Phase 1. And that project should be wrapping up by the end of this year.
Okay, so because it's focusing on phosphorus, we're not, it's not supported by the plan? I'm not,
Yeah, the plan focuses on total nitrogen reduction, so their total nitrogen reduction is captured in the Phase 1.
I think we do collect phosphorus numbers, but our
Yes,
funding.
yes, yes.
yeah.
The phosphorus numbers are collected,
Yeah.
but the cost share is based on the total
Pound of
nitrogen reduction. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Terry, please.
So what do we do differently to treat the phosphorus differently or in addition to the nitrogen?
Are you asking at a wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, at this project we're talking about.
I don't know what.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
That's why I'm
I'm not a
asking. Todd,
wastewater
do you know?
engineer, so do you know? Yeah, sorry. I can look into that and get back to you.
Todd?
Okay, there you go. Those engineers know. It's
Well, alum's one way, but often it's just a reconfiguration of the process to encourage that biological removal of the phosphorus as well. So, I mean, there's a variety of different process types that you can use. Some will do fine at nitrogen, and then more advanced processes, when you go through more series of those biological steps, will get to the phosphorus as well.
I have no idea what.
You got to add more steps.
Lorraine.
okay, so in advanced wastewater treatment, which is what's required, is there phosphorus removal involved in that then? Significant amount
Yeah,
of phosphorus?
typically on true advanced wastewater treatment, you will have a nitrogen and phosphorus standard, and generally you're getting down to 3 nitrogen, 1 phosphorus. And as a reminder, for the later discussion, this is required by rule in their permit now, and not necessarily something that was originally part of the plan, was paying for items that were required by rule and law, and that had also separate funding sources, which are rates and revenues. So prelude to some of the next discussion, but I do think that's important, because remember, most of what we're working on here, it was twofold. It was, one, there were no laws that was required these things to be done. We're trying to do extras to clean up the lagoon. Candidly, that's changed on septic tanks too, because there's now a septic tank conversion requirement. I think it's July 2030, all existing septic tanks are supposed to be converted to advanced treatment. So that's now a law. Now, the other element, I think, relative to the plan was, is there a funding source for this? And so, there's quite a bit of difference between, a homeowner that's having to come up with $30,000, that concentrated expenditure, as opposed to a community-wide expenditure on the entire wastewater plant. So, I mean, for me, that's the two pieces of it. Is it required by law, and is there a clear funding source that's available to do that work? So just as a reminder.
All right, as a tee up. Okay, anybody else have any other comment on the video? Okay, great. I had one thing, Brandon and Terry, and I'm not sure where we are in our communications contract. I know we had different contracts for the videos and stuff. What I'd love to see, because I think we're doing great on our long form videos. I love them. They're so educated. I'd love to see possibly the same material, just recut in like 15 seconds or 30 seconds, something shorter. And that way we have different strategies, because long form like this is great for like YouTube or something where you're sitting in a couch environment or in a train or in a bus, but maybe the shorter ones for some source of social media that just reaches out and grab you. I think, with any sort of communications, you've constantly got to be moving your target, because you saturate a group and then you've got to figure out what group aren't we hitting. So I think those quick clips will help us. Awesome.
Yeah, and some of that we are limited on which platforms we can do the shorter, like reels on, just because of the way the archives social picks up on those platforms and records it, so we have to be able to keep a public record of when we put those out. And there's certain platforms where we can't capture that public record, so we're limited where we can put those shorter ones.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think having them is the first step, and then figuring out some sort of capture method for sure. Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next agenda item, which is the project plan submissions. Terry.
All right. So this is, I'm going to go over the 2025 project applications. These were ranked first based on the green column here, which is the eligible cost share rate offered in the plan in dollars per pound from low to high. Then the total cost, dollar per pound, low to high. Then the total nitrogen reduction, high to low. And then we have our total project costs, the SORL eligibility, the cumulative cost share, so you can see what our total amount of requests are. If they have secured any grants, and then I added some brief notes, just so everything was on one table. And here's the bottom of it. We had a total of 21 applications, which totaled 9.5 million in requests. Most of the applicants are here, and I tried to address any questions that we received prior to this in this presentation, but if there are additional questions, they should be able to answer them for you.
And so real quick, what I had talked to Terry about before is for her to go ahead and go through her presentation, answer any information that she's already received and questions, and then we can ask the applicants individually if we have questions on the
Yes.
project.
And then I'll go into how we can fund these projects. Okay. So our first project is the unincorporated countywide vegetation harvesting 2 project. This is for $114 per pound to remove over 4,000 pounds of total nitrogen, $472,000 in eligibility. With this project, they anticipate to harvest 2.75 million pounds of vegetation from the Kelly Park West ponds, which are in the left image. They want to purchase an amphibious excavator, rake, and workboat for future vegetation harvesting projects, and also a nano bubbler to pilot test in a brackish water pond at the Florida Boulevard Pond, which is off of Sykes Creek. Next, we have 4 requests for clam restoration projects. These will use a drone to distribute 2 to 3 millimeter clam seed with a density of 1 million clams per acre over aquaculture lease sites. It's estimated that the 1 million clams will remove an estimated 200 pounds of total nitrogen per year. Project monitoring will occur at 4-month intervals using 10 random half-meter by half-meter quadrats. So a paper was distributed about these projects. There's estimated to be 1/3 survivability with this method. So the Titusville project aims to distribute 24 million clams with a total survivability of 8 million. Hog Point will distribute 15 million clams for a target survivability of 5 million. Then we have the Grant Island project in the CIRL. This will also distribute 15 million with 5 million surviving. And then the Rockledge project will distribute 9 million with a target of 3 million surviving. Next, we have a stormwater project, the Coleman Pond Circulator. This project is the second project for this pond. So previously, Sorrel installed the floating wetlands, which are on the left image there. Now, Titusville would like to install the circulator, which will further reduce nutrients by an additional 10%. And this pond treats.
One second, Terry.
Can we ask questions as we go along?
If you'd like to.
Well, so these four clam projects all refer to a $2 million grant?
Oh, yes. So there was a $2 million grant that was received as like startup to help with facilities and getting the project started. So
And
this
that
would.
grant came, do we know where that grant came from?
Can you look up in the notes real quick?
The reason I'm asking is because Thad Altman's got a $2.5 million grant in for the upcoming fiscal year, and it sounded like, the word sounded like it was, in fact, I think it makes reference to this clam restoration project. I was just looking to see if there's a connection there. I wondered if this is the same $2 million that's reflected in all four of these requests, right? There's not $2 million.
No.
for
That
each
$2 million is not being used for these four requests. So that mention of that grant was for startup on the initial projects that were started. So these requests are for these individual projects only. But so that grant funding was used for hatchery work, employees, facility maintenance and whatnot.
These projects, Terry, if you look on the chart, have $0 in secured grants.
Yeah, those grants were already expended, that 2 million. It was just mentioned as a startup to get this going, and this is like phase 2 in a sense.
The grant funding was from FWC.
Okay, thank you.
FWC was the grant funding source for that startup. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
I had a question as to only a third survival rate seems really low. And is it just because they're dropping them instead of placing them?
So part of this methodology is previously, they were doing the nets, which are very labor intensive. So with this, there's no labor involved, and it's survival of the fittest out there.
Lord of the Clams. Yes, Laura Lee.
Okay, so actually, the 30% survival rate is really, really good because under normal circumstances, just life out there in the lagoon, it would be an expected survival rate of only 10%. But the predator species in the lagoon are at such a low level right now because of the condition of the lagoon. This is actually a really, really good time for these kind of projects, because the survivability will go down as the predator species increase in the lagoon as the lagoon recovers. So actually, this is a really, really good, it's a high number, and it will only go down as the predator species increase. And part of this predator species being able to increase is because we're seeding the clams and giving them something to eat. So this 30% is a really good number.
So I like this back and forth, and I think it's good. I'd like Terry to finish. If we have questions about the project, I think it's a great question. And then once we get through the list and she tells us kind of the playing field on how we can pigeonhole these in, then I think this conversation is great. So are there any, Don, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have real questions about the 30% because this was done over an 8-month experiment, not even a whole year. And this was during the winter too, when the water quality is probably better. And so, you know, it's not during the summer months when the DO goes low towards the bottom, and there's a lot of water quality questions that I have that you know, affects the efficacy of the whole thing. So I would like to see more experimentation
before, before we just do these large projects like this.
All right, well, we'll continue that conversation in a little bit, but good points, good points. Okay, Terry.
Okay. I think I finished on Coleman, right? It's
Yes.
treating 673 acres with the circulator. Next, we have the Tennessee Street baffle box. This is in the same basin as the Coleman Pond, and this would be a second generation baffle box with bioabsorption activated media. And we use the treatment train to calculate the load reduction for this project. The Osprey Pond Circulator Project, same thing as the Coleman Pond. We installed a floating wetland previously in this pond, and now this circulator will add for an additional 10% of reduction, and this one treats 315 acres. Next, we have 2 requests from the Brevard Zoo for oyster restoration projects. The North IRL Oyster Project 4 will construct 43,560 square feet of oyster bars, and the Central IRL project will construct 37,602 square feet. Next, we have the Welty Pond retrofit. This will install a floating wetland, but with a sturdier mat, and this will hold turbidity curtains, and these will be slowing the flow and allowing for a longer residence time for nutrient uptake and settling of suspended solids. So this one is off of Welty. Then we have the similar project here for the Lake Washington and Croton Road Pond retrofit. And you can see this is a much thicker floating wetland platform here. And then there's the pond there right off of Lake Washington. Then we have the North Wickham and Conservation Place wet pond retrofit. This is right in front of Longleaf Elementary School on Wickham. And it's the same concept with the sturdier floating wetland turbidity curtains. We have the City of Melbourne Darrow baffle box request. This will install a 3rd generation baffle box right along near Crane Creek. We have the Line Street Cemetery baffle box also along Crane Creek, and this will install a 3rd gen as well. We have the Melbourne Cemetery baffle box. This is in the North Indian River Lagoon and will install a 3rd generation baffle box.
Can I just real quick, what's the difference between a 2nd and a 3rd generation?
Good question, I asked this too.
Okay.
So
Is
I
it
think it's a
debris
terminology
removal?
thing. So the baffle boxes have the baffles to collect the debris, and then
Yeah.
2nd generation is normally with the
BAM.
BAM. And I think it's just a terminology difference, so one used 2nd and 3rd, so I.
Danny,
What?
could you come up, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Danny, City of Melbourne Engineering Department. First generation baffle boxes were literally concrete boxes with baffles. They slow down the water so the sediment falls out to the bottom. 2nd generation added baskets in them to catch debris.
Yeah.
And then we added BAM to them, and so those are actually a 3rd generation by adding the BAM to them. We've been doing 2nd generation, calling them BAM, but we try to clean up the language discussion because there's some newer things coming. We're calling those 3rd generations now.
I didn't get that memo, mine's the same thing.
That's what I was just
So
gonna ask.
it's just
No worries.
it's just a
I love it.
terminology
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah.
but we're just
Yeah.
trying to, we were trying to condense it down for some other grants and things, because I had only were allowed to use so many letters in a grant application, so they limit you to
What
120
is
words.
this, like the year 2000 bug again? Okay, so just point of clarification then, is the one in Titusville are also a 3rd gen?
3rd, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, we're good, thank you. That was gonna be my question. If we're on a 9th gen iPhone, why aren't we upgrading to a 10th gen, right? All right, sorry, Terry.
Okay. We have the City of Satellite Beach West Side Basin Water Quality Improvements Project. This will install 26 tree wells with bioabsorption activated media, 9 bioabsorption activated media lined bioswales, and then 53 inlet baskets within that basin. Next, we have the City of Cocoa Beach, Cocoa Isles Boulevard Dry Pond. This will install a bioretention area with the BAM and lined with Florida natives. Now we have the South Beaches wastewater treatment facility upgrade. This will convert an existing 2 and 6 MGD wastewater treatment system to advanced wastewater. This project is anticipated to be complete design by the end of '25 and start construction in 2026 with completion in 2028. Utilities has secured a $14.2 million grant for this project. Next, we have the Port St. John wastewater treatment facility replacement. This would completely replace the current Port St. John facility. Design is estimated to be complete by late 2029 and construction complete by 2032. Land has not yet been purchased for this facility, and the request here is for design only, for Sorrel to support the design only. The TN and TP reduction is the same on here because both are estimated to be reduced by 6 milligrams per liter. And our last project is the Palm Bay Septic to Sewer Conversion Project. This is to connect up to 416 properties from septic to sewer. The properties were prioritized based on TN loading, and we received a question, will the city move forward if this project is if Sorrel funding is not received? And the city responded that this project is contingent upon receiving the FDEP water quality grant, which Anthony mentioned we should know in the springtime, hopefully. So that's everything I have for the projects. So do we want to discuss now or then go into how we would fund these?
Is there any other questions on the presentation? Just on the presentation, and we'll dive deeper. Go ahead, Laura Lee.
Well, no, I just had a question about the Port St. John facility.
Okay, well, let's see if we have any questions for Terry, and then we can go ahead and dive into the projects. Okay, I had one on the presentation, the South Beach wastewater. Where is that grant from, do we know?
FDEP, I believe.
FDEP grant, so part of the 100 million for the lagoon?
No.
What's the 100 million question?
So the state offered $100 million in grants last year. Do you know where that money came from?
No, I don't. We have a 50-50 match on the 2 MGD portion.
I need to speak up here.
We had a 50-50 match on the 2 MGD portion, and then we had 14 million on the 6 MGD portion of it.
Okay.
So they're FTP grants.
Okay, so FDP, but we don't know where. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Eric?
I'm not 100% sure this is the kind of question you're looking for right at the moment, I guess, but I was sort of curious generally about residual effects of some of these projects. For instance, is the cost of the vegetation harvesting where they want to purchase the boat purchase is included in there? And
Yeah, they would use the funds, this 400 and something that they were eligible for, to purchase that equipment.
okay, and then as it pertains to the numbers you have, for the nitrogen removed, that pertains to this specific pond and not future ponds cleaned up by the boat?
Correct.
And what are those numbers going to look like
The future,
when you don't have to buy the boat in the future projects?
the cost per pound, you mean?
Yeah. that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
much lower.
Right.
I think that's hard to predict right now. Each pond is different and variable, so with each of these vegetation harvesting projects, we require them to go out and test with the lab the nutrient concentration of the plant material, so we have an accurate assessment of how much was removed.
I think what Eric's asking is like, so now that they have the hardware, do they have a harvesting plan for the next year, following year, whatever? And so how much would they estimate that they're going to be? Is that your
Yeah,
question?
basically, what's this going to do for us in the future? Like, how is it going to positively
Millions
affect?
of pounds would be
Yeah.
my, do you have a better estimate?
Yeah, just trying to rank them, you know?
Will you come to the microphone, sir? I'm sorry.
I lost my shoe. Anecdotally, because every pond is going to be harvested at a different frequency, one of the initial ponds that we harvested several years ago, we have returned 3 times.
and removed similar amounts of vegetation and similar amounts of nitrogen. And of course, those return trips are not eligible for any matching funds. But we will continue to maintain our ponds in perpetuity. That's our intent.
Great. Thank you, sir. Don, did you have something?
Yeah, what I'm finding is as I go through the last report that some of these projects are not explained in the last report, you know, and an example of the baffle boxes and the generations of those. You explain BAM and all that in the 2024 report, but we're getting up in generations, and also with the floating. There's nothing on floating vegetation. Just a comment, really on floating vegetation.
Yeah, it's considered a type of stormwater project,
Yeah,
so it's captured
so-
in that section.
Yeah, so if the explanations can be enhanced in the next plan. And then these circulators also are not included. So as we advance our knowledge on stormwater treatment, we should include explanations.
And so what we can do, we'll get those updates for the plan in January, the way it is now, Don. And so I think including that and giving them some guidance would be awesome. I think that would be great.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Eric.
I guess I have another sort of similar question about the clam stuff. With recruitment and that sort of thing happening, we're anticipating that these numbers would increase as time goes on, or?
Yeah, Todd wanted to be here today, but he couldn't make it. He said that the intent is for a third survivability, and they should reproduce within a year, so the population would double.
Double per year.
Mhm.
But are those numbers are not included?
No, this is 1 year,
the
third
TN.
survivability. Mhm.
And so you anticipate the benefit coming from these clams to self-propel without more funds, basically?
Correct. Mhm. These funds would just support the 1 year of the drone and monitoring.
Okay.
Dr. Windsor?
Are we going into
So,
the questions?
yeah, well, what I'd like Terry to do is kind of tell us how much funds we have and how they see it, and then we dive into the project. Okay. All right, so this is what we have to play with, everybody.
Yes, so I am going to start with the easy stuff. So first, we have our North Indian River Lagoon restoration requests. So we have the 3 projects, the 2 clams and the Brevard Zoo oyster project, which totaled $1.2 million in requests. From the NIRL County Oyster Bar line, we have $4.3 million in that, and that's kind of a bucket of money. With these, so subtracting that $1.2 million in requests leaves $3.1 in that NIRL balance for restoration projects. So for the CIRL, we also have 3 requests that total just over $1 million. So in the county CIRL Oyster Bar line, we have $708,000. Back in May, the COC approved an additional $8,550 for the Hog Point project expansion. The City of Melbourne withdrew the Riverview project, but then Hog Point came in under budget, so that gives us $890,000 in the CIRL available. But we have $1 million in requests, so we have a shortfall of $163,000.
Props to Hog Point coming in.
Yeah, it was the supportive grants that helped with that, so. If we support the first 2 clam projects and downsize the square footage of the CIRL oyster project to 28,990 square feet, that would fully fund the CIRL restoration projects. For stormwater projects, we have, in the Banana River Lagoon, we had $534,000 in requests. And if we remove the 4 lowest performing basins in the Banana River, that gives us $561,000. So that would support funding those 3 projects. So
As substitution.
yeah, we would substitute the 3 of the requests from the 4 that have not been, had anything started yet. So that leaves us a balance of $27,296 in the Banana River. For the North Indian River Lagoon, we have these projects here. The Welty Drive Pond and the Melbourne Cemetery Baffle Box are listed as priority basins in the plan, and so I have the requests there on the left and then the availability of funds for those 2 basins on the right. We have approximately 1.2 million in requests here. So if going through the withdrawn projects, so Lionel, Cherry Street, Hamilton, and the North and South Lake Mont Ponds vegetation harvesting projects were withdrawn, we saved an additional $100,000 with Sandpoint Baffle Box. We could take the 2 lowest performing stormwater basins in the NIRL, and the remaining balance from the 2 priority basins mentioned on the previous slide gives us $1.8 million to fund these projects. So now that gives us a balance of $701,000 in the North IRL basin. So now we have our central stormwater requests. So we have the 2 requests that total $706,000. We do not have a remaining stormwater budget left in the Sorrel plan. So if we take the remaining NIRL balance plus the Banana River balance, we can fund these 2 projects. And I also wanted to note the proximity of these 2 projects to the NIRL. So they both are along Crane Creek, and that line is right down the middle there on the north side of Crane Creek. So now we have our wastewater requests. We have the 3 projects here. The South Beaches and Palm Bay are in the Central Lagoon, and Port St. John is in the North Lagoon. We have 5 million in requests here. The Titusville Zone H project has been withdrawn, along with the Indian River Shores package plant. And if we take 2.8 million from septic upgrades, we can fund these 3 wastewater projects. So there's a balance of approximately 35 million in the there's a balance in the CIRL septic upgrades line. I think 35 million is the total for all the sublagoons. But we could take that, and this could produce a higher nutrient reduction by funding these 3 projects instead of performing septic upgrades. So that's how we would fund all of these requests this year.
Okay. Okay, so Laurel, then Terry, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, Terry? Go ahead, Terry.
Just reset me for a minute. So that I started out with this chart, which is what, $9 million worth of requests?
Yeah.
But right now we're fully budgeted. So everything you're doing is going through saying, we need to find 9 million somewhere.
Well, I did that through substitutions and withdrawals that we had.
Yeah. Okay, that's just, so we're clear. We need to find, if we're going to do any of these, we need to find something in the existing plan to get a rebate or cancel or something.
Not necessarily. Some of them are buckets that we have, that there was no money yet assigned to a project, but there was money assigned to a project type on some of them. And others were withdrawn, projects that have already been withdrawn.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
The Port St. John project, so we've been trying to find funding to do some kind of a centralized, huge project in Port St. John that would include pumping wastewater over across the river from the Space Center. So is that there's not going to be like a separate Port St. John entity and then this big thing too, right? This is part of the?
I'm going to let the engineer on that answer.
Katie Sweet, member of our county utilities. So my understanding with the larger plant is that's still in discussion, whereas our existing wastewater treatment plant is aging, so we're looking at other options for that. We're also looking at anything to keep it going for the time being, but to add any more capacity, we would have to look at a larger facility. But my understanding with the larger centralized plant is that's still under discussion, what's going to be done with that.
Yeah, I think that was the regional one, but I don't think there's been any action on that yet. Okay. Lorraine and then Charles?
Charles?
Well,
Or Charles and
just a
Lorraine.
comment from the NEP meeting this past week. Space Florida did talk about that wastewater plant. So yes, it is still it's heavily being thought about and trying to figure out where they're going to get the funding on. I was curious, though, too, on the two projects, stormwater projects in Melbourne, and the map you showed south of Crane Creek. And I believe that's in an area of underrepresented population that has been experiencing a lot of flooding, especially with the, the hurricanes we've been having. Would those projects help to manage the flow of that water so they wouldn't experience the flooding that they've had? And here comes Danny to tell us all.
Hello, Danny with the City of Melbourne again. No, these are not any flooding projects that are down there. They're just truly nitrogen and phosphorus removal, and then large amounts of trash, because all these baffle boxes picked up a lot of trash, but not any flooding. We have some other projects, because they're not got any nutrient removals in them, that we are going to be looking at to do for flood control. But currently, we don't have any projects ready to go that have both components tied together.
Thank you, Danny. Lorraine?
And all I was going to offer is the regional wastewater treatment plant. I think it's heavily dependent on federal grant. Intuitively, the political situation changing as it has, it may be more favorable, given that it's serving the Space Force Station.
Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Windsor? I don't know.
I'm not sure about where we are on questions.
Anything you want right now? Project? Anything? Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to go back to the clams if we're done with this, but while the stormwater thing is still up there, Melbourne did withdraw a project, right, that they had previously been on the plan for, and so that money went back into the pot, and so that should probably come into some consideration with the stormwater projects in Melbourne.
Yes.
I just mentioned it as a side. Back to the clams again. The clam projects in total, not by basin, are around $700,000, $800,000, something like that. It's a great idea. There have already been some comments made about a limited study on the project. 30% I thought was extremely optimistic in terms of a viewpoint of survival. And so let's pull for them and say, yeah, they're going to make 30%. But just suppose they don't. Let's say they have a 10% survivability, which is more what I would expect, 10% or even less. 10%, 20 versus 30% makes a significant difference in the nitrogen removal numbers. Is that amount of money they're going to be awarded from this plan based on the survival of the clams or based on our estimate of their survival of the clams?
We haven't, for these restoration projects, have not based it on survivability.
And so, my major concern is with one limited study that we were just provided last week. I hadn't seen it earlier, but anyway, I have concerns about 30% being too optimistic. I would say if it had been 10%, I probably could go for it, but not 30% at this point. This should be done. I'm not sure at this scale, and I'm not sure who should be funding it. Because we're supposed to focus on efficient and use of the money. We've been hammered repeatedly over the last 8 years about projects we have picked. This one is a feel-good. It's a wonderful project. It's got helicopters, remote control.
Commissioner Smith is going to fly the drone. He's flying
everybody
the
wants to
drone.
fly the drone. So I just have concerns about how we're calculating the nitrogen.
Go ahead. Yeah, Stephanie? Todd, did you have something? Go ahead, Stephanie.
And similarly, in order to fund this according to what you presented, we would have to cut back on an oyster project. We know the oyster projects work. So I would be less inclined to cut back on the oyster project. That's just my feeling.
Todd, did you have something, or you removed it? Go ahead, Laura Lee, please.
Well, I'm not sure, I mean, maybe we didn't have all the information available at the beginning years ago when we started on the oyster projects either. I mean, sometimes you have to take a chance. And so rather than throwing out all of the clam projects, maybe you would reduce the amount of funding in the central IRL, but leave the clam projects alone in the northern IRL, because we have the money in, we'll still have a balance of money remaining in the northern IRL. But I would be opposed to throwing out all of the clam projects. I think it's new technology. There hasn't been a lot of studies done. It could be really good, but we don't know if we don't try it. And so I wouldn't be opposed to cutting back on the clam projects in the central IRL so that you can keep the oyster project going. But I don't want to see us just not do any of the clam projects. Thank you.
Okay, I got a question on that. I know Charles got something in that. I think the zoo wanted to chime in too. But real quick on that question. So, because I'm thinking about the different parts of the lagoon, if there was a part of the lagoon that we felt the oysters may be more successful, and so my question is the northern part, especially Mosquito, we know is getting acres and acres of seagrass. So is that a better spot for the clams where we would think they would have the most chance, or because it's so clear that would increase the predatory, is that the right word, where we would have a less percentage? Is there an answer that I could get from somebody smarter than me on this committee? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the two locations would be Grant Island and then also up in Titusville area. Those
Would be the ones that would have the highest chance.
Yeah.
Okay, so Charles, and then if Olivia, you want to come, go ahead.
Sure, I was going to, sort of echoing what's just been said, I think, I wouldn't throw all the projects out. I'd maybe go with one that has the greatest chance of success. 30%, probably pretty high. I think the reproductive strategy of clams is to produce a lot of spat, and hopefully they'll get, at least enough to survive the next generation. So, 10% is probably closer, maybe less than that. But we won't know until we try it. And again, even though if it works at one location, it's going to be unique for the other ones. But I think it's worth trying for one of them.
Did you want?
If I can.
Yeah, please, just come up to the mic.
So Olivia Eskandel, Senior Conservation Manager at the Brevard Zoo. Kind of echoing what most of you guys have been saying, I don't want to, undermine the clam restoration projects, because we're of course doing our own clam restoration projects with funding from Sorrel already through our oyster gardening program. But I do think it would be a mistake to reduce the amount of oyster restoration funding in the central IRL basin. What we've requested this year is all that was left before the Riverview project was withdrawn. So there's a lot of restoration potential in the central IRL for oysters. We have years of data showing that the central IRL, those restoration projects that we've built there, have been the most successful out of all the three basins. So far, our work with clams, and I want to speak on what we've been doing, I don't want to speak on what others have been doing, have shown success of clams in the central IRL as well. But I would be wary of the 30% success rate as well. With our gardening clam program, last year we had less than 10%, probably less than 5% in the bags, all in the central IRL. We had more freshwater that year, some low DO events, and we lost most of our clams, of 1 million seed clams, and that's in protective bags, not dispersal. This year we're like celebrating our success, and it's only 50% in the bags, so protected from predation. And there are still lots of predators out there, even in the central IRL. There are tons of crown conch. They love to eat clams. So just a few things, but just want you guys to think about the successes that we've had with oyster projects so far, and hopefully you see the value in funding those projects. I do think that these projects are great. I wish there was more funding in the central IRL and we could do all of these projects, but just want to put that out there, and if anyone has any questions for me, I'm happy to
Dr. Windsor?
answer.
Yeah, did you say 15? You were excited about 15?
50.
Okay.
So we started with 1 million seed clams in April, May, and as of the last monitoring events in August and September, we have 500,000 still left at all those sites.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank
that's
you, Olivia.
in the protective
In the
bags,
protective
okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Eric?
I guess I'm just sort of curious, is there a difference in terms of where we're filtering out the nitrogen from or things of that nature by using clams versus oysters? Are they just kind of doing the same job? Like, I guess I think of clams as being something that's digging around in the soil, and I'm thinking of some of these presentations by like Austin Fox, and is it cleaning out
Yes.
sand
I
versus,
think-
you know?
We're working on getting further denitrification studies for oysters. There's not a whole lot of literature out there on clams right now, so yeah, we're working with UF, University of Florida, to continue a denitrification study, so it's not done yet.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just the water quality problem of the clams in the sediment versus the oysters, are not in the sediment, they're above the sediment. So they have a greater chance of survivability than the clams, which are affected by soil chemistry also.
To, I guess, wrap up my thought process here and correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess my thoughts as a layperson is that you kind of get rid of the sewage and that sort of thing, and that until you create an environment where the natural stuff survives, and then the natural stuff kind of takes the wheel, and you got a system that lives forever, right? So I guess sort of some of my thoughts were, does it make sense to target areas to bring them to that state, and versus spreading it around as much as possible too, in terms of where you're spending your money? Do you want to get certain areas wrapped up and then move on to the other areas and take care of them later, or really hit, or spread it around evenly?
I think in the past, we've tried the and to do it both, but I think it's a balancing act. So any other questions or comments? And there is a suggested motion, and for those of us that have done this, what, 8 times? 8 times now? It's about a motion, substituting, using withdrawn funds, what Terry presented. I know for myself, I do kind of feel, I think, the same way the consensus has been, where I would prefer to fund the oysters fully, and then maybe do a clam project or two in an area where we feel they're going to get the highest percentage. That would be my feeling. I know we really didn't talk about any of the water treatment plants or anything. Todd, did you have?
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple things. I mean, I just go back to what I said before we got into this project, and I'll first start off with, I appreciate the funding challenges that the utility department has. Costs are going up. These rules, while they seem to have long lead times in the context of building plants and designing plants and doing all of those things, it's not. It's incredibly fast, and if you haven't been in that planning cycle to head in that direction, it is a mountain to climb. So I appreciate where the utilities department is at. That being said, that's the premise of this plan, was not to pay for things that again, had a regulatory requirement and a funding source. And both of those exist in this area. The other thing
for all
is,
3 projects? That was my question to you.
for at least the 2 projects.
So looking at them individually.
I mean, they are required, right? Unless I don't know that rule well enough, but my understanding is that they are required to upgrade to advanced wastewater treatment. One of them is increasing capacity, which again, generally capacity is paid for with some form of system development or impact fee costs so that growth pays for itself. You've got one, which is the Port St. John, which is design only. So in the context of this plan, we're actually not getting any nitrogen removal. You're going to get some pieces of paper that show how to build a facility that's going to get nitrogen removal at some point in the future. So I guess at the end of the day, I think they're good projects. I think they're necessary. I think they tie to the overall objectives of removing nitrogen from the lagoon. I don't agree with the statement that they are going to result in more nitrogen at a lower cost, because the reality is this from only a lagoon plan perspective, the nitrogen being proposed to be removed here is going to be removed regardless, because it's a regulatory requirement, whether these dollars are spent or not. So anything that's spent here, if it's taking away from other projects that are going to be done, then, and then in my mind, that's not consistent with the original directive of the plan. Now, if there is surplus, if we have excess septic to sewer funds because there's just no projects coming along, that we can't spend the money, and that otherwise this money is going to sit unallocated, then, that puts it into a different light. And so that would be the question that I would have, because if we are coming down closer to the end of the plan, and if we're not going to be able to allocate those funds to get that nitrogen removal, then that would change my perspective on it, because while it might not be consistent with the original intent, I do think that we've collected these funds, we've collected them from many folks, many visitors and things of that nature, and it absolutely, these are necessary projects. So if we're going to end up with surplus that needs to be spent, and this is an appropriate expenditure, we've always said the plan has to adapt too. So, I appreciate that and wouldn't have a concern there. But if we're sacrificing projects that are otherwise consistent with the original plan intent, and the plan direction, then that's a concern for me.
And Todd, just clarification, which one is increasing capacity?
Terry,
do you know which? I didn't.
The Port St. John, under the additional information, the new plant will allow for increased plant capacity. It says for potential septic to sewer conversion projects, but, again,
okay.
I don't know if those projects exist or in the context of the timetable of plan, or if it ends up being supportive of development. I don't think you can count on that. But again, the statement was just in there that it was increasing capacity.
I had a question on the Palm Bay one, because I do believe the city passed an ordinance that says if you have sewer line to your property that you have to connect. Is that correct?
2030, right?
Yes.
No, this is the city.
Yeah.
No, I know, but.
Oh, is it 2030 for the city?
No, the city did pass that ordinance last October.
Right.
And so it's
To
being
connect
phased.
by when?
There have, over 4 years, they've broken up their mandatory connections into 4 phases.
Yeah.
So that they don't put that burden on the whole community right at one time.
Well, and regardless of that, July 2030 is the state mandate for either connection to central sewer or conversion to advanced septic. Although the existing law on the books says that has been on the books for probably decades, says that if you have sewer available, you are required to connect within 90 days. It's just no one enforces it. So,
And I think the city had their plan is 2028
so
to
but
enforce
just to
that.
clarify, so I was a little confused when you said 3 projects, because to me, that is a different we got lots of septic sewer projects.
Yeah.
So to me, this isn't a wastewater project, this is a septic to sewer project. And again, so if we want to talk about those, the regulatory requirement is there. All of these folks are going to have to convert by 2030, one way or another, if the law is going to be followed. Big if. But if the law is going to be followed, they have to convert by 2030.
Yeah.
That being said, the other kind of criteria that we've worked off is that funding source piece. And so there's the difference between a concentrated, you know, 20 or 30 or 40 or $50,000 on a single homeowner as opposed to a community-wide investment in your infrastructure. So for me, the two wastewater and the septic are two different categories of projects, because we've got to consider that Palm Bay one in the context of our other septic-related projects.
Terry, did you have something?
Yeah, so I think Todd made some good points about this whole issue of not subsidizing the utilities. And it sounded like he was saying, well, whether we did this project or not was a function of whether we had money. And my thought there would be, I don't think we want to set a bad precedent, right? So if the thought process is we shouldn't be subsidizing the utilities, then we shouldn't subsidize the utilities, whether there's budget or not. Related to that is, it's not clear to me how this rolls through. The 10-year thing, the 10-year date is when we stop collecting the funds. But it's going to take another 5 years, 10 years, some amount of time. I think this committee still has to exist. I think the staff still has to exist, and that has to be. And so we end the 10 years, all the money is allocated, but 10% of it has been spent, or 20%, whatever the number is. So I guess I'm less concerned about, I don't think the money's going to sit there and not be used. I guess that's my thought. I think when we sort through all this, that eventually all these dollars are going to be spent, even if it stops at the $516 million. And the objective is still spend them as wisely as possible.
I think two things on that, and I did have a conversation with Virginia. I think we're looking at coming in under our projected collections this year. We were under last year. And so, again, we have budgeted, there is inflationary costs, and we do have overages built into each project, but each year as we end up coming in under the collection, last year, this year, next year, you know, that money we don't use may already be soaked up. And in the progress report that Aaliyah presented, I don't know if you guys saw how many of them were like, bid was rejected, or bid was going back out. And I would anticipate 90% of those are probably because the costs have come in so high. So I think any funds that we have today will be sopped up tomorrow. So I think that was the question. I had another question on Todd's comment, but you have?
Just one other thing to add. I do think there's some additional details that may still warrant some investment in these. One of the things that's noted in the write-up is a target of 2 milligrams per liter. AWT's generally at 3. So I do think there's potentially elements that if there's additional removal in that design that is beyond that regulatory requirement. We have been very consistent in saying if you're going above and beyond, then there's opportunities for funding. So it may be that there's also some places here just for some additional analysis that says, yeah, we've got a regulatory requirement, we're going to meet that, but yes, we're doing some things. So for me, putting that in the context of there is above and beyond, or and those kinds of things would open up that door more as well.
Stephanie, please.
I also think it's significant that they do have funds that are going toward this project. And so we're just augmenting the funds that they already have. And I feel that is significant.
That's the South Beaches one, does have grants, yes. I had a question, because and again, for those of us that have been on this for a while, have battled with that projects that have a funding source and not. But you said something interesting, Todd, that you said that the design process, when it's done, delivers paper, not removal of pound of nitrogen. And I can see that. For me, I've progressed, I think, a little bit in my thinking of funding projects that have a funding source, that maybe some of these utility systems we do fund or look to fund the design process, but not necessarily the construction, because that's where the users would pay, you know, as they're adding new users or as they're updating. So for me, expending on a design, a one-time cost, felt easier. Does that change your opinion or perspective on that?
No.
Great.
You don't build anything without design, so whether it's design or construction, it's all part of the enhancement. It's not like it's,
But we could say, like, one of the funding, I believe that the St. John one is just to fund the design. And so that's not funding the construction. So like the South Beaches, I don't know if there would be an option to say we could fund the design phase of that as opposed to the construction phase.
yeah, for me, that's, I mean, you get your removals when, you get your benefit when it's built. So, I mean, if we were gonna, 2 levels, right? Does this make sense for us to be funding with kind of the mission of the plan? And I don't, these are vital to the community. So at the end of the day, you know, maybe it's that we think they ought to be funded, but here we ought to be clear and transparent about what we're doing now. So for me, that's, if there's a change in policy that says we want to fund them because we think they're so important and they're critical and these changes in rules have been so significant that we still want to put funds toward them, as long as we're transparent in the change of the policy, I'm okay with it. That, you know, to me, it's, what I don't want to do is to make a recommendation that's that is inconsistent with our mission and policies. If we're going to say that we're making a change because we think it's the right thing to do for the community and we're transparent about it, different story, game on. But at that point, still, dollars spent on construction are better than dollars spent on design. You gotta have both, regardless, you gotta have both. But dollars spent on construction are gonna yield results faster than dollars spent on design. They just are. Now, but you gotta do both. So candidly, if we make the change and says from a policy standpoint, we want to, wastewater's a priority, we're fine in supporting that as long as that's transparent. And that we're saying that that's a change in the nature of how we're recommending funds, whether it's design or construction. You know, from a practical standpoint, we know there's a law that is going to be a more enforceable law than what the septic tank side of things. We know this is going to move forward. There's no doubt. Maybe the timing could be a little off, and if we're helping getting it off the ground, so be it. As long as we're transparent about the kind of the shift in the policy and mission attitude of this committee and the plan.
I think another term I would add is consistent. And I think that's what you're saying, is if we're gonna be transparent and change the policy, then we have to be consistent on how we apply that. And my concern with the Palm Bay septic to sewer is up in Cocoa, didn't we approve the septic to sewer project up there as far as the construction, but we did not approve any funds for the connection? Was that correct?
No, that's, the Cocoa J and K are a typical septic to sewer project.
I think he's talking Cocoa C.
Oh, Cocoa C.
Yes.
Oh, Cocoa C, yes. So that was approved for just design because we were out of money. We couldn't approve the whole thing. So that, at that time, we let them move forward design. They came back with preliminary design and it was modified to move forward.
Okay, but I think originally didn't they request funds for connection too? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm just trying to make sure that consistency part, because if we're gonna do something, we've gotta look at the bigger picture. Don?
Yeah, Todd, with your thought pattern with the new law of 2030 conversion for advanced wastewater treatment for septic tanks now, that they'll have to be installed, and also connections to, those all shouldn't be funded by Sorrel because it's now law, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's the two elements of it. Is there is it law? So yes, it's law.
Yeah.
And is there a, a valid, able funding source? That puts it in a little different context than when it says individual homeowners, but ultimately, they can have their own funding source too, their bank accounts and loans and mortgages, but these are substantial changes in the regulatory environment too. So I'm not necessarily opposed if the committee wants to say, hey, these are massive shifts in the regulatory environment and that we think that changes how we view things, so be it. But I think it's very important for our credibility, the credibility of this program, to make that clear why there's a shift if that's the case. So I do put them in slightly different buckets just because, when you take a look at the ability of funding on a utility scale and ability to bond and things like that as opposed to an individual homeowner scale, they are different. But you're right in that first lever of the regulatory requirement, that has changed. That is now a minimum regulatory requirement.
But they've never paid towards treatment at all.
What do you mean?
They've had a septic tank the whole time, and so they've never contributed to the community of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So is that their contribution? Is that how you would view it?
Again, I don't know the policies here, but my suspicion is that when they connect, that they are required to pay their impact fees, the connection fees, which is their funding of the portion of the treatment capacity that they would use.
Was this something that we should?
Somebody in the, you want to come up, sir? Where are you, I don't recognize your face, where are you?
City of Palm Bay Utilities.
Okay, great.
Throwing myself to the wolves here.
We're sheep, man, we're sheep.
Okay.
Bah, we're sheep.
Just
No
because
wolves
it keeps
here.
coming up a lot, and I know it's going to get to me at some point, so just want to get ahead of an earlier meeting that I was invited to here. There was a DEP representative, and I asked about the upcoming 2030 mandate, and I just want to read off an explanation I got because it's pretty pertinent to what we're discussing here. Their response was, on lots less than 1 acre, when a new or repair permit application is submitted, is what that'll apply to. So only when there's a repair or a new permit after 2030 will they have to convert to AWT or the advanced treatment with her. It's not straight across the board, hey, they all got to be replaced. It's when they have an issue that needs to get repaired. Per that, not me, but that's what I asked at that. Also, again, I'm not familiar with the project, but just for your guys' knowledge, when there are designs that remove nitrogen through addition of filtration in waste plants, and those filters actually increase capacity. So I'm not saying that applies to what's been spoken about here, but that is a possibility. So design to remove nitrogen that also increases capacity is just part of the process in some cases. I just wanted to make that clear.
No, thank you.
Yep.
Lorraine?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say in regard to the regulation and us making sweeping changes, that there is so much pushback, so you just heard that opinion, which a lot of the utility directors will jump on. It seems to me that the 2030 date is more of a signaling, which is commonly what they do in these things, just like the lead and copper rule or any other law in water. It signals, and then there's usually a lot of pushback when you get closer to the date. But so I would hate to see us make sweeping changes without, having an absolute deadline.
Stephanie?
To me, that kind of changes the discussion, because if this rule is only going to apply to those who are applying for new permits or who are being forced to purchase a new system, I know, and we've experienced the fact that there's a lot of failed systems out there that people are not choosing to replace. They're just letting it sit because they really don't want to have to put out the money. And so that could mean that none of these, or very few of these systems, will ever get replaced because they'll just choose to let them sit because they don't have the funds to be able to afford that.
Terry, can you bring up on your presentation where the funds for the septic to sewer and the advanced water treatment, did those came from the bucket? Is that my
No.
recollection correct?
That would be coming from the withdrawn project for Titusville Zone H, which was $1.6 million.
Okay, so that one is already withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay.
Indian River Shores would be withdrawn, and then pulling $2.8 million from the septic upgrades pot for the central Indian River Lagoon.
Okay, so the Titusville one was withdrawn, Indian River was withdrawn, already withdrawn? Okay, so those two amounts we have. And then the one below, the septic upgrades, that's that bucket that we have for people that have been calling in, phones
Correct.
ringing off the hook for funds. Okay,
Which.
does that change any?
I want to pull
Any
up.
hearts and minds? Todd, are you doing math on your phone over there?
No, I'm looking up, because there's two different bills. There was Senate Bill 712 back in 2020, and then there was House Bill 1379 here in 2023. And I do think that they're different, and I do agree on a statewide basis. There is that upgrade to advanced septic on a statewide basis is more lenient and just requires plans for conversion, but gives some outs, and it does tie in to that 1 acre piece. But between 1379, and I forget, I was trying to look up where it is. I forget whether it's in 1379 or 720. The IRL's treated differently. And there are specific, as an example, advanced wastewater treatment on a statewide basis has a different set of rules than it does in the IRL. In the IRL, it is specifically required to go to advanced wastewater treatment. I believe septics are that same thing. So, but I don't want to misspeak because I haven't gone back and looked at that exact language. But my understanding is that those conversion requirements are not optional. Now, again, and the law and the application of the law are two different things, because candidly on the Palm Bay side, the reality is that the existing septic tank rule says as soon as the central sewer becomes available, the connection time period is 90 days. It has never been enforced except on a local level, but on a state level, it has never been enforced. It's only been if the local government chose to. But that law has been on the books for years. So likewise, I agree, could this be signaling? It all comes down to what is chosen in terms of enforcement discretion, but the law is the law from the true standpoint. So are there choices made to not enforce the law? It happens all the time. I think you're likely to see more enforcement discretion on the septic side than you are on the wastewater plant side. Wastewater plant side, those regulatory requirements are implemented by rule through DEP, and DEP is not going to give the wastewater plants a lot of grace on that. Now, what will happen is the utilities are going to have trouble. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of utilities that are going to do everything they can do and still miss those deadlines, but they'll end up in a consent order that will say, okay, it's basically a new contract that says, okay, here, we understand you're making concerted effort. You ran into issues, and we're agreeing to a new plan with you to make sure that those things happen regardless. So the wastewater plant stuff's going to happen. The septic, that's a whole lot more complex because it gets implemented through many different local governments, and we'll see. I mean, but that one would not shock me to see not nearly as much emphasis.
Can I ask the Port St. John woman again? You're from the Port St. John project, right? So that 981,000 is strictly for design?
For the AWT component of design, not for the whole design and not for capacity increase. It was only for that component.
Okay, that's for the design of that component. And you guys are ready to move forward on that?
No, we are working on procuring land at this point.
Okay. So that would be funds that would be on hold until you procured the location?
Until we move forward with design and put an RFQ out, correct.
And that comes after you find the land, or purchase the land?
Once we're in that process, I think once we have it nailed down, then that would be something we'd look at. I'm not sure at what stage we would start procuring the engineer for it, or if we'd look at multiple land sources at the same time.
Okay. Do you know if there is, and I know, I'm going to look into my crystal ball here.
Of
If there
course.
is a regional plant that gets approved, is there a plan for this plant? Would this plant then just be shut down and everything would move over to the other one? I mean, this one's for a replacement anyways, for another plant.
Correct. It's an aging facility. We don't have additional capacity for future connections. So we're looking at that, but I know we're in discussions about that regional plant, so we're keeping all of that in mind.
Okay, and then upon a new replacement, this one would be shut down, or the current one?
The existing
would-
facility, yes.
Existing facility would be shut down?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Bobby?
Can you give a reminder of where the Zone A is in Palm Bay?
The Palm Bay Zone A is subject to sewer?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not on that item yet, but.
Oh, this one is the phase 2.
Yeah, this is the Quick Connect.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
Yeah. So that is, we have a list of 416 properties for that project, for the Quick Connect project. The Zone A is a separate septic to sewer project. It is the next agenda item.
So real quick, and then Laura Lee, so that 2 million that we had in the central septic upgrades, 2 million and change, that's the remainder that we have right now?
No, that's what I wanted to bring up, this, from the financial table, on table 4 of it, we have $20.4 million in that central IRL septic upgrade pot. We've spent 2.7 of it. So this would be taking another 2.8 from that 20
Which
million
would then
pot.
leave us 15, somewhere in there?
Roughly, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Laura Lee, please.
If the central regional wastewater facility does become reality, does that 981 go back into Sorrel then? Will we get that money back?
If they decide not to go to contract and move forward with that project, yes.
That was where I was going, Laura Lee, yes, yeah. Because if they were ready to move forward tomorrow and that regional gets approved, then we would lose whatever funding went into that already. Okay. Lots of good discussion. Anyone have any feelings? Stephanie?
I would move that we approve the recommendations coming with the exception that we reduce the number of clam projects by 1, that we pick the 2 most likely to succeed projects, and that at this point, we eliminate the request for design for this St. John's water treatment plant.
Okay.
That's my motion.
So I think there are 4 clams, so you're saying deny 2 of them. And then would we fully fund the oyster?
I'm sorry.
No,
That
you're-
was-
you're good, yeah.
I was yes, that the oyster would be fully funded at this point.
Okay. Laura Lee?
Can we go back to the clam and oyster slide, please?
We'll have our lovely Vanna White.
Do you want the funding one or the project slide?
Funding.
I think the funding one. I mean, I don't know if we need to eliminate 2 projects. We might be able to do it with only eliminating 1.
Here's the slide with the 2 NIRL, or 3 NIRL requests, and then here's the CIRL.
So there's 2 in the NIRL and 2 in the CIRL.
Right, so how much money are we missing in the CIRL oyster thing?
For funding all of the CIRL projects, we had a $163,000 shortfall.
So we would only need to eliminate 1 clam project, not 2.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, the motion is amended. Is there a second?
I guess we.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, seconded. Dr. Winter?
Yeah, and if we had an abundant amount of money, I still would recommend not funding more than 2 of the projects. Just because you have the money, there's no sense throwing money until we show that some of these projects work more effectively than the 30% target we're talking about, okay?
Or at least
So,
30%.
yeah.
That was for discussion, yes,
Yeah.
great. Todd and then Charles.
Yeah, I
and
guess
then
the only
Barbara.
thing I would add, and obviously I'll maybe flip sides on this whole wastewater treatment plant discussion a little bit, is that I agree with the motion based on where we're at today. The part that I would consider adding to it is that they be reconsidered and allowed to demonstrate how they're exceeding rules, because at that point, that if we can show that we're doing extra, that we're providing accommodations for the other emissions, the other mission of the plan, such as the septic tank, if it's truly going to be that capacity is going to, that we have an expectation that that's going to enable those septic tank projects to move forward. If it's that you're designing in a way that you're exceeding those nitrogen standards and things of that nature, then I think it's 100% valid for us to be supporting that, and I would support it. So for me, I agree with the concept of not funding it right now based on the information that's there, but I would include kind of a modification that says they should be reconsidered if they can demonstrate that they are exceeding the requirements of the law.
Stephanie?
For me, that wasn't even the consideration, because this is for design. And the issue is that central plant going to be built or not? And that's a big if. And so why would we design something if there's going to be a central plant? This has nothing to do with the upgrades or anything else. That's the part that I felt like we needed to just eliminate at this point and wait and see what happens with that central plant. That's my point.
Okay, Charles?
Oh, yeah, so a couple of points there, because at this point, I don't really think we know about the central plant. I mean, right now, they're going to look at it for the Space Center and the Air Force Station. I hadn't heard anything about for the communities, so there's, that unknown. I think the caveat that Todd mentioned about lowering from the 2 into 1, the effluent, which is exceeding the requirements, I would think that would be a way into supporting those type of projects, because they do exceed the requirements. So I think that's a real important consideration. And going back to the clams, I would go with one project at this point, because it's great, it's experimental, we can learn from it and come back and maybe a year from now and say, we need 10 of these. So I would prefer just one, whatever one might be the most successful.
So I'll let Barbara talk about, my question on the clams were, if we had 2 locations, such as a northern and a central, would that provide us with different data? I agree with you, Charles. My question, and I wish Todd wasn't here, who's the
No, he
clam
couldn't
guy,
make it
right? Terry, Barbara, and then, go ahead.
So, in thinking about the clam projects and what ones get funded, I think one of the thoughts I put forward is, why don't we reduce the allocation based on 10% survivability, not 30% survivability? In other words, invest less in the project. Still go for 2. I like the idea of having 2 different locations, see what the results are, but don't fund it assuming 30% survivability, fund it assuming 10%.
So I think, we could do that. I think the question would be is whether or not they're going to be able to perform the task if we don't give them the amount at 30%. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, I'm going back to the little clams again, too. They've been on my mind. And I can't quite figure out how the county determined a 30% survival rate, because they're not using the protective bags, and the zoo had only a 10% with the protective bags. So that's the question. How did you come to that?
So Todd provided a paper that he had done with a similar drone distribution project, and it had, in that paper was the 1/3 survivability. Don mentioned it earlier. It only had an 8-month monitoring period in it.
So you feel strongly about this with the research that you've done here?
Well, I just feel like there's not enough evidence there. And also, the way they did it, they initially put out buckets when they distributed them, and they collected the buckets, and they figured out the area that they were covering and the amount that's going in a specific area. Then they came back and put down quadrats randomly through that area and determined how much survived, within a determined area, within a specific area. So that's how they did the 30% survivorship.
And I really am for anything that will continue the perpetuation of the clarification of the river. So I'm for the clams and I'm for the oysters and anything that we can do. If that's the basis that you feel good about that, I'm with you. I like the idea of funding all the clams, but I know that we have to accommodate a budget here. So if we reduced it by one rather than reducing it by any more than that, I would be for it.
For two.
Okay. Bobby, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the clams here still a little bit. Well, because it's just, that's where I come from,
with you,
where
man. I'm with
I
you.
grew up hearing
Get 'em
about
back.
the massive clams.
Grew up eating them.
And then, no, they were mostly gone by the time I was around,
Such a young tyke you are. Such
Yeah,
a young tyke.
and so I just heard about how there used to be and what they did, and I've always had this kind of notion too. It's sort of like we're going to have a D-Day event for the clams in particular, because like we keep, right? What keeps popping up with the clam conversation here, even with our circle. If you got 10%, you might be doing good. 30% is fantastic, right? And that's just the nature of the beast, because they need to have a mass amount. So at some point, we're just going to have to be ready to say, okay, we need to dump tons and tons and tons in different areas just to get them to the point so that they can have a success rate. And I wish I could remember, I was trying to think of it. There is that biological theory that certain species need
It's our strategy, that's what he's calling it, is our strategy.
Oh, okay, where you need a certain population level to
Yeah,
succeed,
our
or you then also go extinct,
Yep.
right?
And that's what he calls the whole thing, is our strategy. This is our strategy plan.
Okay, yeah, so I think, and we do know the oysters already are succeeding, they're growing, they're continuing on their own. At some point, we also have to discuss with them, where do we change how we address the oysters as well, our role in the oysters, and the fact that they are doing better and growing on their own. Do we keep continuing doing everything for them? I'm not saying we stop the oysters now, but that's something that does also need to come up in future coming conversations. Where do we now, these are succeeding, because, right, our point is to get things functioning naturally again. So what point do we have to keep sustaining certain things ourselves, so then we can now go on to the next thing to help bring it back to what we've helped to eliminate? And so I think that I would like it to become in a conversation at another time a little more. But I don't think we should we should at least do 2 of the clam, because the diversity of the lagoon that we have, I mean, what's going on in the north is very different what's going on from south of here. And if we're doing it to say we're going to do this so we can also have data and we could compare, well, if we have the ability to do comparison data in our county better than almost anybody else, and we don't do it, then what's the point of, then you are just throwing in, I feel you're just throwing it down and seeing if it sticks. So I think that we at least need to do the 2 different areas, and I would love to see it down in Grant again, because that's also near the inlet.
Right.
And it's north of the inlet. We know they're succeeding south of the inlet, but how do you balance out the predation? And that's where Matt explained to me before, that's surprised how much of an issue that was.
So if we, because I've heard it a couple times, if we're talking about 2 clam projects, one in each basin, would it be agreeable to let Todd, the clam guy, pick which one he feels would have the highest percentage of the 2 in each basin? That way, we're not specifically saying that one or this one. We're letting him choose the one that he thinks is going to have the highest, or do you all want to pick one in this group?
So you're saying, we'll just say we want one in the 2 areas, but you choose which one of these 2 you think would be.
Can I
I'm saying that as an option
Real
Terry?
quick, these projects were ranked on cost share eligibility too, so if you want to take that into account with the total nitrogen reduction compared to cost.
Well, I think they all were 170,
No, the first one's $272,000
got it.
for 1,584 pounds of TN reduction.
But again, that's at that 30%.
Yes,
And so
all
if-
4 of them are at the 30%, but only 2 of them have the same cost share. The Rockledge is at $102,000.
Yeah. So, looking at those clam ones, is there one in each basin we'd like to remove? Don, you're saying yes, which ones?
Oh, I'd eliminate the Rockledge one, and then also the Hog Point.
How does the committee feel about that?
I didn't hear.
Hog Point and Rockledge would be removed. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, so it sounds like we've got the clam issue, and we'll gather this all into a motion. I think Stephanie had to leave, so I would like for somebody to make a new motion, just in case there's amendments that happen. But before we do that,
Can you clarify then what on the clam, we're removing 2 projects?
correct, so we would be approving the restoration of native clams in the Titusville location, and then in the Grant Island location.
Yeah.
Would be the 2 we would be approving.
So since we're going to consider a new motion, one of the things that I would like, and I understand where Stephanie's coming from on the uncertainty on the project, but we do have 2 different wastewater projects. So I do feel strongly that we should send the message that we're supportive of these as long as they're consistent with that plan policy. So I'd recommend, and I'm willing to make that motion, that with the adjustments to the clam projects, and that we're not including the wastewater projects, but that the 2 wastewater being South Beach and Port St. John, but that we recommend they be reconsidered and support them if they're able to demonstrate. We support funding for any costs that they're able to demonstrate are in excess of the regulatory requirement, with the additional caveat on the Port St. John that they also need to resolve their plans relative to a regional plant as well. Since it's going to be reconsidered, it can be both pieces for that, both that they have that extra, that they are going above and beyond, and 2, that they've resolved their plans with a regional facility. Because at the end of the day, we do know this is a critical issue, and I'm supportive of funding, but under the right conditions consistent with the plan.
And Dr. Winslow, real quick, Charles, I think the point is that it does need to provide the Space Center and the Space Force base, but they wanted to get it off the barrier island for resiliency. So I think once it was moved, that would then provide support for the community in that area. Dr. Windsor?
Can we remove the motion that's on the floor in the second? I'm not sure how to do that.
Well, so I think the person that made the motion is no longer at the table, therefore I think it naturally dies, I think, because.
All right, whatever, just, it's on the record now, it's off the table, right?
Correct.
Yeah, all right, great.
Okay, so, we've got, so Todd, then, how would you verbalize your motion?
Beats me.
Come on, man.
His memory isn't that long.
Give me the.
So let's do this.
Give me the
You're
2, what are
saying-
the 2 clam projects?
You're saying,
265 and 267.
well, I think what you said with the clam project was good.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the budget as presented, including, we're including 265 and 267, or excluding?
Eliminating 66 and 68.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve the budget as presented, less projects 266 and 268, less also projects 282 and 283, with the caveat that 282 should be reconsidered and supported for budgeting for costs that exceed regulatory, for cost benefit that exceeds regulatory requirements. And 283 should be reconsidered based upon benefits that exceed regulatory requirements and upon resolution of plans regarding a regional wastewater treatment plant facility. Is that clear enough?
Let's,
Second.
I want to ask the attorney, make sure we're good.
When is it contemplated that these be reconsidered? I guess is my only question.
They need to come back in front of the committee.
Another cycle?
Another,
Well, we've done midterm recommendations, so to me, I don't think they've got to wait till next year, right? I mean,
Well, this would need to be put into the plan that's going to the board in February, to you in January and the board in February.
well,
to
then if they
move
can
to
get it done in the
contract.
next month, great.
well, but then it'd have to
That
come back to us for approval, and then would have to go to the commission. But I do, Terry, I know it would need to be in the plan, but would it be possible, it is still possible to do a mid-year change?
We
We haven't done it.
added projects mid-year
Yeah.
like this.
Okay, so then let me change this, and I think I can reword it in a way that works for you guys. Is that I'll approve the plan as presented, less projects 266 and 268, including projects 282 and 283, but staff are to conduct a review and enter into an agreement only up to that amount that's demonstrated to be a cost benefit exceeding regulatory requirements. And in confirming on project 283 that it will indeed be needed based upon plans for a regional facility. And so that basically is approved. So to be clear, we're approving it, but we're leaving it to staff to make that resolution on any cost reductions tied to that calculation.
So we've got Aaliyah.
Does that work from a legal standpoint?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, so, but you're also saying that the Brevard Zoo Central, the central project's going to be fully funded, like adding that, right?
That was fully from the
Because-
oysters, right, Todd?
Yeah, 266 and 268 were the only ones we were removing.
But the original suggestion was to reduce the price for the Central IRL Oyster 5.
Yes,
So I just want to clarify.
I think Todd's, I think
I just want to make sure it's clear.
you would
Yes,
approve
I agree.
full oyster. Okay. Olivia, did you have something? That was it? I got it. No worries. I saw hands popping up all over the place. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. There's a second on the floor. Is there further discussion? Anthony, I saw you taking notes. Are you good with the direction?
Yes, follow that.
And Terry, you're good with that direction? Okay. Any other discussion of the committee? Else we'll take public comment. Okay, no other committee discussion. Let's go ahead and take public comment. Is there any public comment on the motion on the floor? Okay. Oh, Craig, yes, sir, please.
This isn't going to directly impact what you're deciding today, but I think we really need to be looking at what we do after 2026. So changing some of the policies as has been suggested we look at, I think is an important thing. So, let's make sure that we're thinking about the future as well as, these funds may last well beyond 2026, but still, we need to look at, there is opportunities, and I think we're looking at, especially with some of these wastewater treatment plants, if we're going to do a regional facility, how's that going to get funded? There's a lot of questions that were just being asked around the table here today that need to be answered, and need to be answered fairly quickly, because as Todd is saying, these are long-term. It takes a long time to plan it, and a long time to get it installed. So just a comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment?
Just one quick one.
Yes, sir.
Steve Hancock from Sunnyland. I just want to say what Todd's been saying, I think really makes a lot of sense, that public utilities, the need for public utilities, sewage treatment plants, and the standards that they have to uphold, that is a matter of law, and it's a matter of just common sense, that we don't just want to like wallow in, effluent. To me, the SORL program really should be emphasizing going after those things, fighting for those things that nothing else fights for. So you can't pass a bond to do clam restoration, for example. Nobody's going to go for that. You can't, there's nothing for muck removal, for example, in anything, in the rest of our, public financial system or whatever. So I just really want to support that point, that I think, and this is where, when we pass laws, and maybe just everybody's saying, that's not really, we didn't really mean it or whatever. So I think that's something that's got to be looked at too. I mean, saying that we're going to have these regulatory standards, but then just kind of look the other way if, goals aren't achieved. I just want to say that I think that this program really needs to focus on supporting those things that nothing else supports. And maybe also shining a light on the things that, like the public utilities that should be doing those things, and, kind of holding their feet to the fire. I don't know, whatever way that can be done. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close that. So, motion and second, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Great discussion, everybody. We do have one agenda item left. We want to take a break, or do we want to hit the next agenda item?
Just finish it.
Go for it? All right, let's go for it. We have 18 minutes until we have to have a motion for extension. So, Lorraine, please.
Yeah, can I make a request that we have some sort of, this whole idea of how to interpret the laws that were passed in regard to a 2030 having advanced septic, or can we get some sort of authoritative, since there seems to be some question on this, and several, at least I know of one utility that is going by the fact that no one will need to. So can we be really clear about that?
Are you requesting a speaker from DEP to come and present on the rule?
I think
maybe that's
that would be best.
need.
I think that would be
We need
best.
to know clearly, everyone does.
And then we can ask them individually questions as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the next agenda item is a request from the City of Palm Bay for the Zone A septic to sewer funding increase. So this was an original Save Our Indian River Lagoon project approved in 2016. It is currently approved for a cost share of $2.5 million to convert 77 properties from septic to sewer, and it has an annual TN reduction of 2,136 pounds. As previously mentioned, the City of Palm Bay passed an ordinance requiring property owners to connect when sewer is available. So the current cost estimate for this project is $4.9 million. As you know, in 2024, the SORL plan update included inflation for each project, and that added an additional $499,952 to the project for a total of just over $3 million. So this, based on this cost share offered, the cost share offered in 2024 was included the inflation, which was $1,553 per pound. So Palm Bay is asking for this $1,553 cost share, which would increase the project for an additional $247,000 for a total of $3,317,208 for the Palm Bay Zone A septic to sewer project. So that is the request. The City of Palm Bay is here if there are any questions on that as well, and they included their letter with the request as well.
Okay. All right, what is the committee, any feelings on this? Any motions? Lorraine?
Well, I'm very supportive of Palm Bay, given that they are aggressively pursuing this relative to a lot of the communities. I would make a motion in support.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the
Motion.
recommend funding increase. Is there a second?
I would second.
Okay, Barbara seconds. Committee discussion. Todd, nothing?
Said enough.
Where's Zone A again?
It's near, on the north side of Turkey Creek.
Okay. So the old.
Charles?
Yes,
Oh,
do we need to move funds to accommodate this request, or where's the money going to come from?
The contingency funding. So it's a 9.6% contingency request. There's 5% already allocated in that line for each project, so this is an additional 4.6%.
So there is a contingency bucket, and that's where this is coming from.
Thank you.
Which again, as we move forward in that inflation and cost of construction increase, I think this is going to become something that is standard. Okay, so we have a motion to approve.
I was just going to ask that maybe in the future, you could give us some idea, like the last year, how much more contingency we've spent, to get an idea about how rapidly this.
So that will be the next item after this. And it's just
I also want to add that all the contingency requests are on the financial table, the quarterly financial table, and when they're spent.
So looking at this alone, there is a motion to approve. Is there a second? Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara seconded, thank you. Okay. Any other committee discussion? Any public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Now, to Dr. Windsor's point, and to our December meeting. So I talked to Virginia before she took off, and she was telling me that she was possibly not going to be here, and she told me about her amazing trip, and I, without hesitation, told her she should go, because like any good leader, they're going to have a second who has as much institutional knowledge as they do, because they know anything could happen to them. So our own contingency plan, Terry over there, I knew we would be in good hands. To that point, and to Dr. Windsor's point, we normally cancel our December meeting. But that would leave us then with January for plan text update, as well as conversation involving contingency plans, inflation increases, more of a financial change for the year forward. So we can cancel our December meeting, or we can have our December meeting and have it be just a discussion of the financials that will then go into the plan update that we will see in January. It does not necessarily seem as if there would be any official business in December, so we may not even need a quorum per se, because there may not be motions until January. But so what is the will? Terry, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that we anticipate having the draft plan to you before that December meeting, which would incorporate our latest estimates on inflation and everything. So it'll be in there, and then we could present it at the December meeting if that's the request.
So we could have a December, and then we could decide about the January one in December as well. But I think the question right now is, would you all like to have a December meeting or cancel the December meeting? Dr. Windsor?
My preference is to let staff work on the plan. I would prefer not to have a December meeting. I think it's disruptive for us to jump in there and require them to come in again for that meeting. That's normally the time they're working very hard on this plan update. And if you take the time when they send the plan to you to review it right away, don't wait till the day before our next meeting in January. Give them comments back. They'll get comments back to you before the holiday break, about responses back, because I've done it every year since I've been on this committee. The sooner we get that to them, I assume Tetra Tech's still doing the update. they're very, very responsive, and they incorporate all of our comments as quickly as we can get them to them. So just take the time to look at it, but I'm also willing to meet in December if it's necessary.
And so I asked Virginia that because I said I don't want to be putting an additional burden on the staff. I'm always concerned with their time. She said we're already going to be here at work. So coming in for a meeting wouldn't, but I hear what you're saying
Well, let
still,
me
Dr.
say that
Windsor.
they don't just walk in here for 3 hours.
Understand.
They spend at least a few days getting ready for this, and my understanding is they spend the rest of today afterward doing a debriefing meeting and then working next week on what happened during the debriefing meeting. So you've got 10 people spending an incredible amount of time to deal with us.
I agree. And so those were Virginia's words,
To
but
deal with the plan rather than us.
I hear you.
But that's just my opinion.
I hear you. So, since we pulled back the veil and realized the behind-the-scenes actions of the committee, I agree, Dr. Windsor, I agree. Is there a motion, then, it sounds like, to cancel December meeting? Was that your motion, Dr. Windsor?
I will make a motion to cancel the December meeting.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Barbara and Todd both seconded.
Third.
All right. Any committee discussion on that? Any public comment on us canceling the meeting in December? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote then. All those in favor of canceling the meeting in December, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. All right, so now we'll take public comment. We do have one public comment card. Mr. Craig.
I'll make it real quick. I passed out our invitation to Straight Talk to everyone here. It's not just for you. It's to get the message out to everybody else. So there's a QR code on there, however you want to reproduce it and send it out, but please, I know it's a tough time in December 10th, to try to get people together, but the more people we can get involved in this, the better off that event is going to be, and answer a lot more questions out there. So anything you can do, if you want electronic copies of that, I can help send those out to you also. So thank you.
All right. Brandon?
And I do want to let you know, I checked, and the application link is now live on our website for the COC applications.
All right. So you at home, if you're watching, log on, fill out an application. You too can sit at this table. All right. Okay. Anyone have any comments of the committee? Yeah, Don.
Yeah. November 20th, 1 o'clock at the zoo, I'll be giving a talk on water quality trends within the river. I've taken and improved the talk I gave to y'all and added to it. So if you're interested in some of the things we talked about clams and where they should be, we'll be talking about that.
What time?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock at Brevard Zoo on November 20th,
At the
open
lodge.
to the public at the Nami Nami Lodge. Brandon?
Will it be broadcast, like Zoom, live?
Olivia, will it be streamed? No streaming.
Along
Do
those
we
lines
have
of
to
other events, I
register
know,
for it, or just
Oh,
show up?
So just show up. The zoo loves it when you just show up. So
What
do
time?
so do the Lions. Go ahead, Brandon.
I know we had mentioned, I believe in our progress report last month about one of the citizen science volunteer opportunities with Sea Grant, where they're doing their seagrass blitz, looking for signs of seagrass in the lagoon. That was supposed to be ending today. They said due to some weather conditions and that, they've extended it now to the end of the month. So if anyone wants to get involved with trying to find seagrass and report it to Sea Grant so they can help with mapping areas that are recovering, that's going on still to the end of the month. We shared that on our social media today, so you can find the link to register for that there. It's on Facebook.
Fantastic. Thank you. Todd? And then
Yeah, I just got one thing. I just want to say that, that discussion that we just had on budget really, really pained me as a utility professional, because I want to highlight how, you have a utility department here that is really trying to do the things they need to do, and they face a lot of challenges. And their funding needs are significant, and the change is significant. And these rules that get rolled out that give you 5 years, if you do everything right, you might get a plant upgrade done in 5 years. And so I want to highlight that piece, because, I said the things that I said because long ago I made a commitment to live up to the obligations that I signed up for and to be, ethical and transparent in everything I do. And the reality is when I signed up to this committee, I signed up to the policies of this committee. And the policies of this committee were we weren't going to do things that were required by law and that otherwise had a funding source. But to have that discussion is really, really hard because they face a lot of challenges. And a challenge that I'll issue to anyone on this committee and then also anyone that listens to it and the entire public is we need to recognize that this isn't the only place. And so I support your utilities because they're not trying to just get by with stuff. They're trying to do the things they need to do, but it's hard. And your elected officials that are sitting on those boards that have to raise rates and have to make sure that we're funding for the long term, that's hard too. And so each of us can do our part to support that investment in our infrastructure and to support those hard decisions that your public servants and your elected officials have to make, because those are really, really hard decisions that they're faced with. And so I just wanted to highlight that because, we sit here and we've got very distinct boundaries that we're working within. And I think it's important to remember those, but you can't, if you take those in a vacuum, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Agreed. Dr. Windsor?
The meeting dates for next year, did we need to make any motions about those or just for information? It wasn't on the agenda. I think in the past years, we've done a motion.
I think so, but I think don't we already have up through,
Yeah, this is just to continue with the third Friday of the month from 8:30 to 11:30. And we made the room reservations. I don't know if they were confirmed yet.
They've been confirmed.
Okay. so-
Okay.
thank you. Good point, Dr. Windsor. Okay. Anyone else have anything? All right. Todd, thank you for saying what you said. I know leadership isn't easy. And I think letting those out there know that we support them, we do, we want them to succeed, that's important. So thank you for your comments. Terry?
I just have to say that my inability to understand what you had said is no reflection on your ability, but on mine.
All right, and we'll end on a high note. Thank you, everybody. Great discussion. See you all in January next year.
This project in the City of Rockledge wastewater consists of a 1.4 million gallon equalization basin with associated pumping facility and electrical building with standby generator. The purpose of this project is to pretty much stabilize the fluctuating flows that we have to help make a more consistent treatment process for the plant operations. This new project will actually take care of the nitrogen portion of the nutrient uptake.
Basically, as the influent flow comes in, it's going to flow by gravity from the pretreatment structure to the equalization basins. When the flows are coming in, they're high, it's going to sit and just store the excess flow. When the flows are low, it's going to take the flows and pump it to the downstream processes to maintain a steady flow throughout the downstream treatment plant. It makes it easier for the operators to control as your influent flows and your nutrient loads come in. It changes the dynamics of the process. So by keeping it steady, you have less fluctuations and you can maintain more steady treatment.
This is phase one of reaching advanced waste treatment standards, and we are in the process of in research development of phase two, which will handle the phosphorus of the water standards.
The addition of this 1.4 million gallon equalization basin will allow the city to control flow rates through the different treatment processes in the plant, reducing ammonia nitrogen levels in the reclaimed water by 50 to 85%. Treated effluent from the wastewater plant is used as reclaimed water for irrigation purposes throughout the city of Rockledge. Reclaimed water is a great way to conserve water. However, when the reclaimed water is high in nutrient concentrations, the nutrients leach into the groundwater, which ultimately leads to the lagoon. Those high nutrients result in harmful algal blooms, which then result in fish kills.
So this project reduces the amount of nitrogen in the reclaimed water, but it's still important to use that water responsibly. So homeowners can help out by making sure that they're not overwatering. Only watering once or twice a week with about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch each time that you water. You can test out how much you're watering by placing a small tin can like a tuna can in your yard and measuring the amount of water it collects in about 15 minutes. Visit lagoonloyal.com for more tips and tricks on how you can irrigate responsibly and other ways that you can help the Indian River Lagoon.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.